Chapter 2263. My father said that if I continue to be entangled with you, he'll chase me out of the family. But, Jean, as long as I'm with you, I'm not afraid of anything. Lin Shuya suddenly became agitated. Her face flushed red as she held his shoulders tightly and said, As long as I'm with you, even if I'm no longer the daughter of the Lin family, even if my life is dull and difficult, as long as I'm with you, I'm not afraid of anything. After a pause, she pursed her lips as tears streamed down her cheeks. Suddenly, she hugged him tightly and begged in an almost humble manner. You don't have to worry now. I've already left the Lin family. Last night, I had a showdown with them. I don't want you, I only want you. So she had already compromised so much for him. Could he love her a little more? Even if this love was out of pity, she didn't care anymore. Jean, let's be together, okay? Other than you. I don't have anything else. So let's be together, okay? As soon as Lin Shuya's voice fell, Hua Jin hugged her expressionlessly. Even his heartbeat didn't fluctuate at all. It was so calm that it made one's heart palpitate. She didn't dare to ask anymore. From this silence, she saw the answer. All of a sudden, the world collapsed in an instant. Lin Shuya's body went limp and she slowly fell into the bathtub. Her gaze was empty and lifeless. In fact, she already knew the answer to this. No matter how superb Hua Jin's acting skills were, how could Lin Shuya, who was as sensitive as a woman, not be unable to see that his tenderness and adoration were just a facade? Are you just using me? Lin Shuya asked in a daze. She suddenly looked up and said in grief, I've done so much for you. Why are you so stingy with me? I've given up so much for you, even betraying my family. But why don't you even have a place for me in your heart? Hua Jin's expression froze for a moment. He continued to look at her blankly. His gaze fell on her without any emotion. Pity, but only pity. Why aren't you saying anything? Lin Shuya gripped his shoulders tightly, her gaze lingering on his face as she pleaded. Hua Jin, tell me. I want to hear the truth. I don't want to deceive myself anymore. You don't have to act anymore, okay? Tell me, did you really not love me even a little bit? Not even a little bit? Even if there's a tiny bit of space in your heart that belongs to me, that's good enough. Hua Jin remained silent. Say it. Lin Shuya urged, her heart trembling with fear. As long as Hua Jin said that he liked her a little or cared about her, she would be fearless. Even if the world collapsed, she would have no regrets. He was the only one who answered, even if it was just one word. Yes. She would also do it for him until the end of the world, no matter what. However, after a long period of silence, Hua Jin finally looked at her and said, Actually, you don't have to be so stubborn. As he spoke, he reached out and brushed her hand away from his shoulder. This action, however, startled her. Chapter 2264. It was as if the moment she let go of him, a certain kind of bond between them would be completely broken. I don't want to, Lin Shuya said stubbornly. I don't want to. I just want to be with you. But I don't like you. Hua Jin asked out of the blue. Lin Shuya was stunned and stared at him in disbelief. What? You heard me very clearly. When he finally said this, Hua Jin calmed down and said seriously, I don't like you. From the beginning until now, I don't have any feelings for you. It's just that I'm very grateful for your care and attachment to me. But that's all. You're lying. Lin Shuya couldn't believe it. Or rather, she didn't dare to believe such cruel words. She said to herself in self-deception, You clearly said that you love me very much. When they were together, whether it was kissing or being intimate, were all the words of love that he had said to her fake? Were they really fake? Even though she had her doubts, if he had lied to her from the beginning, couldn't he lie to her until the end? However, Hua Jin was exceptionally calm, so calm that it was almost heartless. He looked at her gently and asked, Didn't you want to hear the truth? Sure. Hua Jin's lips curled into a smile. I'll tell you. Lin Shuya suddenly didn't want to listen anymore, and turned her head away. However, Hua Jin raised his hand and grabbed her chin, looking at her seriously. He stared at her teary eyes and said casually, Xiaoya, you and I are not compatible in the first place. You're the daughter of a prestigious family, a high and mighty missy with a noble status. What about me? You should have investigated my background and my past, right? Lin Shuya suddenly fell silent. Her thoughts flew and she sank into her memories. The first time she met Hua Jin was at a private banquet. This private banquet was organized by a friend of hers. At the gathering, everyone brought their partners. And the first time she saw Hua Jin, he was beside a middle-aged man. Lin Shuya didn't know that middle-aged man. She heard from her friend that he was the behind-the-scenes boss of an entertainment management company and had a strong backing. And the first time she saw Hua Jin, she was deeply attracted to his delicate and beautiful appearance. The so-called love at first sight was probably nothing more than this. She liked his pair of misty eyes. She liked his quiet and melancholy temperament. She liked him sitting in the corner with his entire body shrouded in a heart-wrenching loneliness. Almost no woman would be able to resist such a temperament, and they would feel pity for him. SSSSSS. SSSSS. Lin Shuya, who had always been proud and domineering, felt an inexplicable tenderness from the bottom of her heart when she met him. She wanted to love him and Bizas. At first, the boss didn't know her identity. However, after being introduced, he found out that she was the daughter of the Lin family. At this time, he was already tired of Hua Jin and wanted to get rid of him. However, he still wanted to squeeze out the last bit of value he had left. Thus, he whispered a few words to Hua Jin. Chapter 2265. Hua Jin understood the meaning behind his words and nodded. Before he met her, he was a lowly money boy. In ancient times, a person like him would probably be the private pet of those rich and powerful people. No matter who appointed him, as long as he was given sufficient resources, he would have to submit to those people like a lapdog under the orders of his sugar daddy. He had resisted before, but the result was imprisonment and violent beatings without seeing the light of day. In the end, he was covered in scars and had to bow to those contemptuous mockery. In this world, the brighter the light, the deeper the darkness behind it. He envied those who walked in the light, but could only curl up in a dark corner and silently lick their wounds. Before he came into contact with this circle, he never knew that men could be played like this. In the face of power, how lowly could a person be? Ordinary people could not imagine how oppressive and painful those days were. It was a life worse than death. He was tired of such a dark and gloomy life. He was treated like a thing that could be bought and sold at will. His personality was lowly and his dignity was cheap. And he had to put on a smile to serve those unrestrained and ugly faces. But his sugar daddy had said that as long as he could settle this woman, he would be freed from such a dark life. He desperately wanted to get away from such a life. This woman gave him a glimmer of hope. After the banquet ended, he stood at the door and silently smoked a cigarette. When Lin Shuya walked out of the door, she did not notice that someone was standing at the corner of the door. Hua Jin held her arm and pulled her into the corner. He held her shoulders and controlled her in this narrow space. Without saying much, he took the first step with his actions. He kissed her deeply. Lin Shuya did not resist, either because she was close to him or because she was looking forward to such intimacy. Perhaps it was because he had just smoked, but there was a faint smell of tobacco on his lips. Lin Shuya hated the smell of cigarettes. But unexpectedly, she did not feel repulsed by such a presumptuous kiss. Instead, she took the opportunity to hug him. When the kiss ended, Hua Jin smiled and asked, "Beautiful lady, would you like to have dinner with me?" His smile had a bewitching charm to it. She had failed to live up to her expectations, and was head over heels for him. Even if she was reserved, she couldn't care less. It was as if his heart and soul were about to be taken away by the demoness. When they arrived at the hotel, they booked a presidential suite, and spent the night making love. When they were done, he whispered into her ear, "Let me be your pet, okay?" Her whole soul, and what little reserve she had left, were led by the nose. For some reason, Lin Shuya agreed. The next day, Hua Jin's sugar daddy came forward to negotiate with her. As for the conditions of the negotiation, it was naturally not something that could be measured with money. That man didn't lack money. He only lacked resources, and Lin Shuya could give him such resources. After that, naturally, Hua Jin was privately kept by her, and became her pet. After he got together with Lin Shuya, his life had indeed undergone a drastic change. He finally moved out of that dark and gloomy basement dormitory. Chapter 2266. In that kind of dormitory, to be precise, even a dog could only wag its tail. Lin Shuya rented a luxurious apartment in the city center for him. It had 1 bedroom and 1 living room, and it was a place for the two of them to spend time together. Before that, Lin Shuya had never had a man by her side. Hua Jin was her first and only. She gave him lots of love, a house, a car, and even his debut in the entertainment industry later on. She was the one who pulled the strings. At the beginning, Lin Shuya did not fall too deeply into this relationship. She repeatedly told herself to treat this as a game. Both parties were willing. She was clear about her mission. Her marriage was ultimately not up to her. When she was of age, she should follow her family's arrangements and marry another man. That man was probably from a wealthy family or a prestigious family. In any case, there would be no future between her and Hua Jin. Before that, she might as well play with the man she liked as she liked. It was not a bad idea to have some fun with him. But at the beginning, she had clearly told herself that. However, as the game progressed, she gradually fell too deeply into it. He was like a poppy. When she realized that she had fallen too deeply into it, it was already like drinking poison to quench her thirst. At that time, Lin Shuya was a little afraid. At the end of this game, she would definitely be scarred, right? But even so, Lin Shuya did not want to leave him even though she had the chance. She was a little indignant. She had already done her best, but why, from the beginning to the end, he looked indifferent. He did not even look at her. Even though every time he spoke those words of love to her, and when they were entangled, those tender feelings that numbed her to the bone were also good, but in the end, it was just an illusion. He did not love her. She was indignant. She had already fallen into the swamp. Her stubborn personality made her want to drag him down with her. She needed him, but did he not need her? Or did he not need her at all? Hence, when Lin Shuya walked into the ward that time, and saw Hua Jin holding another woman's hand tightly, he finally broke into a smile. The melancholy on his face was gone, and in its place was joy and tenderness in his eyes. That bright and beautiful gaze pierced her deeply in that instant. On what basis? What right did she have to do everything in her power to win his favor? In the end, his gentle expression blossomed in front of another woman? Could it be that all the hard work she had put in was not enough to please him? Lin Shuya was finally enraged. That night, in the ward, it was as if she was possessed. She vented her anger by shouting those cruel and hurtful words at him. Men are indeed lowly. I treated you so well, but you didn't take it to heart. That woman only took care of you for a few nights, and you treat her so sincerely. Rongjin, why do you have to ruin yourself like this? Do you think she treats you sincerely? She only sees you as a pitiful worm because she feels sorry for you. Such mockery was harsh, sharp, unbearable, and unbridled. Lin Shuya still remembered how Hua Jin hugged his battered body and curled up in a corner of the hospital bed. His head was lowered, and he did not say a word. It was only by chance that she caught a glimpse of a tear falling from the corner of his eye. Chapter 2267. However, Hua Jin forced a smile and said, "You don't have to apologize." Why? Because what you said is the truth. Hua Jin looked up and forced a smile on his face, but it was enough to make one's heart palpitate. Pathetic, despicable, lowly. All this while, I've been groveling to please all of you. Isn't that so? Lin Shuya was stunned. All of you treat me as your private property, as something that can be trampled on. However, she has always treated me as a human being, so, even if it's just a little bit of my self-esteem, she has at least given it to me. Just because I'm a cheap object, all of you can act so high and mighty in front of me without any scruples. Isn't it also because you covet the pleasure and warmth that I can give you and want to keep me by your side? That's why you're so nice to me, isn't it? However, she has never coveted anything from me and never expected to get anything from me. Perhaps such behavior may seem hypocritical to you, but at least I've found my dignity as a human being. Hua Jin smiled again. Perhaps, dignity is something that you can easily get. However, to me it's an extravagant hope. That's right. Dignity may seem cheap in Lin Shuya's eyes, but to him, it was so precious. Hence, he had been domineering and arrogant in the production team because he wanted to use this opportunity to regain his pitiful dignity. In this world, The strong preyed on the weak. She gradually came back to her senses. When Lin Xueya came back to her senses, she looked up and met Hua Jin's calm but cold eyes. She could no longer hold back her tears and they overflowed. I'm sorry. I may have done a lot of things that hurt you and said a lot of things that hurt you, but I didn't mean it. Xiaoya, you and I are not compatible. Even if you insist, there's still no way for us to be together. Even if I love you, so what? Will your family accept a good-for-nothing like me? Lin Xueya exclaimed. You're not a good-for-nothing. At least in their eyes. Hua Jin took a deep breath and said coldly, I am. Lin Xueya didn't want to listen to him anymore. She covered her ears and shook her head helplessly. Shut up. Stop talking. Stop talking. If you love someone, you shouldn't force them, right? Shut up. You see, even now, you're still talking to me in a commanding tone. We've never been equal. Hua Jin didn't care about her breakdown. He smiled and said indifferently, I want to love you too, but I can't do it. Shut up. A scream echoed in the empty bathroom. Lin Xueya yanked Hua Jin's arm with such force that he was caught off guard, and was dragged into the bathtub. Her slender body was submerged in the warm pool water. Stop talking. Lin Xueya's drenched body seized the opportunity and pressed him under her body. Hua Jin didn't seem to struggle at all. He allowed the water to submerge him, submerging his shoulders and chest. The warm water kept pouring into his eyes, nose and ears, but he didn't struggle at all. He didn't move at all, and even stopped breathing. Chapter 2268. It was a passionate kiss. You're the only one I have. Why are you abandoning me? When Yin Shirshir woke up, it was already past noon. She opened her eyes and saw that the curtains in the bedroom had been opened. The warm afternoon sun shone through the clear floor-to-ceiling windows. Yin Shirshir turned her head and saw that the other half of the bed was empty. Mu Yaja had already woken up. Why didn't he wake her up? Yin Shirshir muttered to herself. She wanted to get out of bed, but the blanket was so warm that she was greedy. She thought to herself, I'd better stay in bed for a while. Thus she turned around. However, the moment she turned around, she saw Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen lying on the edge of the bed. One of their tender little faces looked adorable, while the other looked disgusted. The former was from Xiao Yichen while the latter was from a certain black-bellied little boy. Yin Shirshir was so shocked that she almost choked. Mommy can really sleep. Little Yichen faintly uttered these words. Yu Yu looked disgusted and said airily, Daddy is usually so busy. If Mommy continues to be so willful, Daddy will be squeezed dry sooner or later. Tung. Yin Shirshir's face instantly turned red. You, what nonsense are you talking about? Was she the one who had misunderstood? She felt that Yu's words had a deeper meaning. Moreover, these words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Squeeze dry. She couldn't imagine that this word had come out of Yu's mouth. The point was, did he mean what she had imagined when he said squeeze dry? At the thought of this, Yin Shirshir's face turned unreasonably red again. Xiao Yichen comforted him. Yu, don't worry. Daddy is so energetic. Even 10 mommies won't be able to squeeze him dry. Hey, Yin Shirshir blushed and said unhappily, where did you learn these words? Xiao Yichen snickered and said, Uncle taught us. Yin Shirshir was confused. What did he teach you? Originally, we wanted to wake Mommy up earlier, but my uncle said not to wake you up too early. Daddy and Mommy must be busy until very late at night. I want you to rest more. Otherwise, Daddy won't be able to rest well. Uncle is afraid that Daddy will have kidney deficiency. In the future, Mommy's happiness will be at stake. The more Xiao Yichen talked, the redder Yin Shirshir's face became. A murderous look slowly appeared in her eyes. Poof. Yu hurriedly covered Xiao Yichen's mouth and scolded her angrily. How could you betray your uncle like this? The two little guys suddenly felt a gust of cold air, and couldn't help but shiver. They snapped back to their senses, and turned to see Yin Shirshir sitting up on the bed. She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. Gong Jie, this rascal. How dare he teach these two little guys such things that are not suitable for children? She got out of bed and changed her clothes. Without even washing her face and brushing her teeth, Yin Shirshir stormed out of the bedroom. In the living room, Gong Jie was playing video games with Mu Yaja. When he looked up and saw Yun Shirshir storming over, he smiled and said, "Sis, you're awake." The next second, Yun Shirshir pounced on him. She reached out and twisted his ear 180 degrees. Chapter 2269. Ow. Gongjie covered his ears innocently and looked at her pitifully. "Sister, you're being ridiculous. Why are you twisting my ears?" Yun Shirshir glanced at Mu Yaja from the corner of her eye. He was stunned by her murderous aura. She then reacted and pulled Gongjie to the side. She lowered her voice and said, "What kind of things did you teach them?" Gongjie was still confused and shook his head blankly. Yun Shirshir punched him. "Hurry up and tell me the truth." I really don't know." Gongjie looked extremely innocent. His eyes were like those of a deer's, blinking repeatedly. It could melt one's heart. However, she didn't fall for it. "Tell me the truth. Xiao Yichen and Yu were hiding in the corner." They secretly watched this scene and felt satisfied. They smiled at each other and gave each other a high five. Poor Gongjie had been pranked by these two black-bellied rascals. In reality, Gongjie was really innocent. He wasn't the one who had instilled those words. Yu and Xiao Yichen had just put the blame on him. Poor Gongjie couldn't answer, and was taught a lesson by Yun Shirshir. Mu Yaja glanced at the two rascals who were hiding in the corner, and laughing non-stop. He hooked his finger at them. The two rascals were like beasts that had been summoned. They eagerly went into his arms. Mu Yaja pinched their noses and questioned, "What bad things have you done?" "Oh, we didn't do anything bad," Yu said self-righteously. Xiao Yichen covered his mouth and snickered. "Uncle is so wronged. He was pranked by Yu. Now he can't clear his name even if he jumps into the Yellow River." Muya, on the other hand, had a clear mind. The three of them had a tacit understanding. After Yu explained a little, he roughly understood. Gongjie was unlucky. A black pot flew from the sky and smashed on his face. In the end, Gongjie did not understand why he offended Yun Shirshir for no reason, and was taught a lesson. Yun Shirshir seemed to have realized something. She suddenly turned around and glanced at the two little kids in Muyaja's arms. She suddenly understood something and her face darkened. "You two. Mommy, you woke up so late. We're already being very nice to you by not complaining that you're lazy," Yu said with a smile. Yun Shirshir felt guilty and stammered for a while. She did not have the courage to reprimand them. Poor Gongjie. He took the blame and suffered for nothing. "Where's Huajin?" Yu said. "Oh, brother Huajin received a call. He said that he had something urgent to attend to, so he left first." "Oh," Xiao Yichen suddenly said with disdain. "Mommy woke up so late. Luckily, Yu can cook. Otherwise, if we waited until Mommy woke up to cook, we would be so hungry that our souls would leave our bodies." Yun Shirshir looked away guiltily and played dead. Gongjie said, "But then again, Yu's culinary skills are really impressive. I wonder who she inherited this talent from." As he said this, he quietly looked back and forth between Yun Shirshir and Mu Yaja. Suddenly he said, "Positive from negative?" Ahem. Yun Shirshir cleared her throat awkwardly and explained, "Actually, my culinary skills are not bad. You probably inherited this talent from me, right?" Chapter 2270. Yu teased her. "Mommy, don't you know how to be embarrassed when you say that?" Yun Shirshir waved her fist at him. "Can you stop teasing me? Even if I don't tease you, you won't be able to hold the fort," Yu said coldly. Yun Shirshir was speechless. Yu patted her shoulder sympathetically. "Just like what Uncle said, negative is positive. Perhaps this is the reason why you and Daddy are two culinary idiots. I have an extraordinary sense of taste when it comes to food. Actually, I have to thank you and Daddy for this." Mu Yaja was speechless. He felt that he had been shot while lying down. Yun Shirshir suddenly saw a platinum necklace on the sofa. She walked over and picked it up. She asked curiously, "Whose necklace is this?" Gongjie shook his head. "It's not mine." Yun Shirshir looked around again. She didn't remember Yu and Xiao Yichen having such a platinum necklace. It must have been left behind by Huajin. Yun Shirshir picked up her cell phone and dialed Huajin's number. In the shower room. It was quiet and only the sound of Lin Shuiya's suppressed and broken sobs could be heard. Even though she was trying to restrain herself, It wasn't difficult to hear the despair in her voice. Hua Jin was pinned under her as he stared blankly at the ceiling. His chest, which was exposed above the surface of the water, felt the warmth of her body. He didn't know if it was the water that was overflowing or her tears. The water in the bathtub flowed continuously and spilled onto the floor. The sound of water splashing was exceptionally clear in this quiet space. Hua Jin slowly closed his eyes. It wasn't that he was indifferent to her tears. However, her tears only made his heart ache. That was all. That was all. What was the saddest thing about humans? At least, to him, the saddest thing was that he would never fall in love with another woman in this lifetime. Love is nothing but the product of desire. He no longer had any expectations or illusions about love. Perhaps it was because he had been too tired for many years that he had lost the strength to love someone. Perhaps if there was no such memory, if he and Lin Xuya had met normally and fell in love normally, perhaps he would have fallen in love with her regardless of everything. But now he thought that he probably wouldn't believe in love and marriage anymore. Could it be that the fetters between people were not all linked together because of desire? Humans were the most selfish species. It was because of their selfishness that they loved themselves the most. Therefore, they would fall in love with a man or woman who could satisfy their desires. Didn't Lin Xuya love him because he could satisfy all her desires? She was different from other girls. Some girls liked wealth and power, but she grew up in such a superior environment, and had always been high and mighty. Therefore, she disdained those things that were almost at her fingertips. And his appearance just happened to satisfy her fantasies. Lin Xuya was like a little princess trapped in an ivory tower. Because of the restraints of her family, she always followed the rules. Everything followed the family's arrangements meticulously. She yearned to break through the secular world. He was just a psychological comfort, a dispensable substitute. How many people were like Yin Shirshir and Muyaja, like destined lovers? Chapter 2271. Xiaoya, calm down. He stroked her hair gently and said in a calm voice, "You said that you and I were just a game. Now the game is over." Lin Xuya was stunned. That's right. Back then, when they were together, they made love that night. When she woke up, she said to him, "Play a game with me." There was no love, only a game of lust. He was like a pet that she kept by her side. However, she was too immersed in the game. What made her most indignant was that such an arrogant person like her had lowered herself and begged him to love her for his sake. Yet he could still say to her calmly, "Now the game is over." Besides indignance, she felt more heartache and despair. Lin Xuya said stubbornly, "You can't live without me." She was the one who had taken care of his career. Ever since his debut, she had made use of her connections to invest in him. When he was still a newcomer, he took on a big production movie. Following that, he received many gold medal historical dramas. With one of the historical dramas, he became famous overnight. He went from being an 18th-tier actor to a first-tier historical actor. Apart from his exceptional good looks, it was also inseparable from her support. He couldn't leave her. In the entertainment industry, which was full of power, without her, he would fall overnight no matter how popular he was. When Hua Jin heard this, he smiled coldly and said casually, "I'll live well without you. I won't die." Such a light sentence had completely crushed her pride. "But I can't live without you," she cried and complained. "How am I going to live if I lose you?" "No one can't live without another. Maybe you won't be able to adapt at first, but after you leave." "I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to." Lin Xuya hugged him, reluctant to part with him. "Jean, don't leave me, okay?" Like a drowning person who was swaying on the sea and was grasping at the last straw, she forced a smile and said in a trembling voice, "Although I was expelled from my family, I can work hard with you. You continue to act and be a popular star. As for me, I will work hard. We will be like an ordinary couple. We will work hard for the future together. We will fight for tomorrow together. One day, we will be able to rely on our own abilities to have a place of our own in a city like this. I will work hard, very, very hard. For you, I am willing to suffer any hardship." Hua Jin was silent for a long time before he smiled helplessly. Life is not a game. Don't be childish. Yes. She had indeed given up her power and wealth for him. She had been willing to betray her family and be expelled from her home for him. She had sacrificed a lot. Even if she was sincere, how long could this kind of life last? It was no different from falling from a high place to the bottom of the valley and being smashed to pieces. If that was the case, she might learn to be an obedient girl for his sake. Every morning, she would eat a steamed bun or buy cheap breakfast from the roadside and squeeze into the subway. She would be like an ordinary girl, working from 9 to 5 and working hard for a few $1,000s a month. However, she definitely wouldn't be able to live such a life for too long. Chapter 2272. Humans were never equal to each other. From poverty to riches, a person's mind would become numb because of overnight riches. Because it came too easily, it would also be lost very quickly. As the saying went, virtue carries the world. So, what if one lost everything overnight? The transition was even more difficult. Lin Shuya was willing to do anything for him. But sooner or later, her blind impulses for him would be worn away by reality, and there would be nothing left of her. Working hard for the sake of tomorrow like an ordinary person? What a joke. Just as he was about to speak, there were slight bubbles on the surface of the water. Something was vibrating in the pocket of his clothes. It was his cell phone. Hua Jin took out his cell phone from his pocket. Before he could see clearly who was calling, Lin Shuya snatched the cell phone away from him and glanced at the screen. On the screen she saw the name Shirshir. Yin Shirshir, was it her? Lin Shuya bit her lip hard and questioned in a low voice. Where did you go last night? Hua Jin kept quiet. Tell me. Lin Shuya threw the cell phone on the floor. The ringtone stopped ringing. Hua Jin's eyes suddenly had a tinge of anger. Pick it up. What? Lin Shuya widened her eyes. Right from the beginning, the man who was usually quiet and calm actually became like an enraged lion because of her act of venting. His gaze became sharp and fierce. Pick up the cell phone. You're angry. Lin Shuya questioned him. Who exactly is Yin Shirshir? You're actually so angry because of her? Pick it up. Hua Jin seemed to be really angry. He stared at her with a vicious gaze. As if someone had touched his reverse scale, his face turned pale. Lin Shuya, enough is enough. This was the first time he had called her by her full name. Hua Jin seemed to be completely enraged and lost all his patience. How long are you going to be willful? Hua Jin smiled coldly. Do you know how painful it is for me to be with you? She obviously didn't love him, but she had to pretend to be deeply in love with him. Not only did she have to cooperate with him, but she also had to face threats and violence from his family. Is that enough? He suddenly stood up and gracefully stepped out of the bathtub. His calmness only served to accentuate her embarrassment and embarrassment. Lin Shuya did not dare to believe that one day, he would rebel against her. But now that it had happened before his eyes, he had no choice but to believe it. Lin Shuya, if I let you off, can you let me off too? As Hua Jin spoke, he picked up the phone from the floor and wiped it carefully. Then he left the bathroom without looking back. Lin Shuya stood rooted to the ground in a daze, not reacting at all. After Hua Jin left the bathroom, there was a long period of silence. Then she heard the sound of the door opening and closing. His heart skipped a beat with a thump. He's gone. He left without looking back. And she had been abandoned once again. She really had nothing left. Lin Shuya curled up and hugged her knees. She buried her face in the crook of her arms in despair and cried loudly. After Hua Jin changed his clothes and left the apartment, he stood in a secluded place and dialed a number. When the call was connected, a man's dignified and deep voice could be heard from the other end. Who's that? The father and daughter were really cut from the same cloth. They were equally arrogant. Chapter 2273. Hua Jin. The moment he heard this name, it was as if a bomb had exploded. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. Bastard! You still have the guts to call me. Hua Jin moved the phone away from him with a look of disgust. He lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. However, because he took in too much, he choked. Cough, cough, cough. He covered his mouth and coughed violently. The man's furious voice came from the other end of the phone. You despicable thing, I don't know where you came from, and I don't know what tricks you used to seduce my daughter. I didn't call you to listen to you lecture me. Hua Jin interrupted the man's incessant scolding. He paused for a moment, and without waiting for the other party to speak, he continued. Your daughter is in my apartment. I don't know what happened between you two, but I'll send you the address of the apartment immediately. You have to come and take her home. Huh? What tricks are you playing now? Uncle, I swear to you that I'll cut all ties with her, Hua Jin sneered, but he still replied politely. Uncle, I swear to you that I'll cut all ties with her. However, the condition is that you have to discipline your daughter well. Tell her not to pester me, and I won't pester her either. I've already laid my cards on the table with her. As for her side, it's not something I can interfere with. However, I'll make it clear to you that I'll cut all ties with her. Whether it's the house or the car, I'll return everything she gave me to her. However, I hope that you can be merciful and stop disturbing my life. I have no intention of interfering with your relationship, so please give me some space. His words were straightforward and embarrassing. Lin Buoxiong had always thought that Hua Jin and Lin Xueya's relationship was not consensual, but it was more likely that Hua Jin coveted his precious daughter's wealth and status. However, in the end, it was his daughter who kept pestering the other party. In the end, the other party filed a lawsuit and complained that his daughter caused trouble for him. What the hell was going on? She was not chased at all. Discipline your daughter well. Tell her not to pester me again. Please don't disturb my life again. These two sentences had infuriated him to the point of bursting into flames. His unfilial daughter, what kind of shameful things did she do outside? Messing around with a man and a woman was a disgrace to him. Fortunately, the matter had not spread. Otherwise, the Lin family's reputation would have been ruined by him. A girl who kept pestering and chasing after a man. Now that things had come to this point, she was still pestering him. Where did she put the family? Could it be that she was mesmerized by his beauty? On the other end, Hua Jin said sensibly, Uncle, don't worry. I'll keep my mouth shut about this matter. Send the address over. Okay. I put the key to the apartment in the mailbox at the door. After hanging up the call, Hua Jin sucked in a deep breath of cold air and sent his apartment's address over via text message. Everything was over. No, he was finally. Lin Xueya cried until she was tired. Coupled with the fact that she had not slept the whole night, she was so exhausted that she fell asleep in the bathtub. She woke up when she heard the sound of the key unlocking the door. Chapter 2274. Lin Xueya jumped out of the bathtub agitatedly. She did not care that she was drenched and dragged her wet body all the way to the shower room. However, as soon as he opened the door, he saw the door open and a group of people in black suits walked in. Lin Xueya shrieked. They were no strangers to Lin Xueya. They were the bodyguards of the Lin family. Could it be? Lin Xueya was still in a daze when she saw Lin Buoxiong walking in with a sullen face. When he stepped through the door, he saw Lin Xueya standing there with her clothes disheveled. She had been soaking in the bathtub all this time. Not only was she drenched, but her clothes were also completely drenched. Therefore, she looked extremely disheveled. Lin Xueya's heart sank when she saw Lin Buoxiong. Her thoughts were in a mess and she could not figure out what was going on. Dad, why are you here? It was fine if she did not speak. The moment she spoke, Lin Buoxiong was furious. Especially when he saw her in such an unsightly state. Her wet clothes clung to her graceful body, so many of her sensitive parts were faintly discernible. Lin Buoxiong glared at the people behind him. The bodyguards behind him knew how to read people's expressions, and immediately turned their backs. Get out! Wait for me outside. Yes. The bodyguards filed out and closed the door. Only Lin Buoxiong and Lin Xueya were left in the spacious entryway. Dad, why are you here? Lin Xueya mumbled. She did not have much confidence in her voice. If she was not in such a disheveled state, she might have been able to raise her chin and speak. But now, she just wanted to find a corner and hide. She did not want him to see her in such a sorry state. Lin Buoxiong's sudden appearance had completely messed up her mind. How did he get the key to the apartment? Only Hua Jin, and she had the key to the apartment. Could it be? The moment she thought that it might be Hua Jin who lured her father here, Lin Xueya felt that the world was spinning. It was not a light blow. Lin Buoxiong heard this sentence. Lin Buoxiong's expression changed again and again, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He suddenly strode forward and slapped her wet face. Smack! A vicious slap came from the palm wind. Lin Shuya didn't have the chance to dodge and took the slap. Her face was slapped to the side and she took a few steps back. She was stunned for a while before she resentfully raised her hand. When her fingertips touched her burning cheek, she was startled. Shameless bastard. You still have the face to acknowledge me as your father. Lin Buoxiong's thunderous roar shook the small entryway, causing it to rumble. Lin Shuya's head buzzed. Her vision turned black and white. She felt so wrong that she wanted to cry, but she couldn't shed a single tear. Look at yourself. Now lower your head and look at yourself. Do you still have the face to call me dad? Lin Buoxiong glared at her in exasperation. If it weren't for her delicate body and if she were his son, he would have flown into a rage out of humiliation. He would have picked up a stick and given her a good thrashing. Was it not enough for her to humiliate herself? Did she have to humiliate the Lin family before she was satisfied? Chapter 2275. Yeah. How could I forget that I was chased out of the Lin family's house yesterday? Now I don't think I have the right to acknowledge you. You. Lin Buoxiong was infuriated by her stubbornness. His chest heaved with anger, and after a while, he gritted his teeth and said, Shuya, how badly do you want to humiliate yourself before you come to your senses? How am I humiliating myself? Lin Buoxiong was so angry that he couldn't speak. He resisted the urge to slap her and sneered. How do you think I found this place? Lin Shuya's eyes widened in shock. She heard Lin Buoxiong's cruel voice. It's all because that gigolo of yours called me and told me that he was determined to cut all ties with you. That's when I found out that it wasn't his wishful thinking to be with you. Do you know what he said? That man said that he hoped that you would stop pestering him. He said that as long as you gave him the car or the house, he would return them in full. Moreover, he would completely cut ties with you. He even told me to teach you a lesson and not to pester him anymore. Tell me, how did you humiliate yourself to this extent? How could such a lowly thing humiliate you to this extent? Shuya, it's time for you to wake up. When Lin Shuya heard that, she cried hysterically. Impossible. You wouldn't say that. Is it you? Did you force him to say something like that? I forced him. Lin Buoxiong retorted coldly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. I forced him. Shuya, he didn't even care about you. It was all your wishful thinking from the start. If he hadn't sent me the address, how do you think I would have found this place so quickly? Ha! My face has been completely thrown away by you. Take advantage of the fact that things haven't gotten out of hand yet. Come home with me and apologize to Grandpa. In the future, cut all ties with that B*TCH and don't get close to him. Lin Shuya fell to the ground, her eyes empty as she muttered, Impossible. Impossible. Humph. How affectionate do you think he is to you? She was just playing with you, but you actually took it for real. Are you done fooling around? Come back with me. No. I'll say it one last time. Come home with me. Lin Shuya stood up abruptly and shouted at the top of her lungs. No. You. Lin Buoxiong was furious again. You unfilial daughter. He turned around, opened the door, and said in a deep voice, Bring her back. The bodyguards nodded and walked in. One of them held one of Lin Shuya's arms while the other wrapped her in a suit jacket. Ignoring her struggles, he hit her on the back of her neck and knocked her out. Lin Shuya's vision went dark. In her daze, her mind was filled with Hua Jin's resolute expression. Naturally, they were experienced and familiar with the technique. After Lin Shuya was knocked unconscious, she was forcefully brought back to the Lin family. Lin Shuya, I'll let you go. Can you let me go too? Rongjin, how can you be so cold? At the hospital. After being in a coma for 2 days and 2 nights, Song Yunqi finally woke up. Chapter 2276. Song Enya had been lying on the edge of the bed, watching over her brother all night. When she sensed movement on the bed, she raised her head abruptly, and was excited to see Song Yunqi awake. Brother, you're awake. Song Yunqi looked at her. Just as she was about to speak, she pulled at the wound at the corner of her lips and sucked in a breath of cold air in pain. Brother, don't move. You're seriously injured. Song Enya held his hand tightly in heartache. She was full of guilt toward Song Yunshi. If she had not caused trouble, he would not have lost control and gone to the Gu family. The day after Song Yunshi was hospitalized, the Gu family sent someone to call and send over the bill for Song Yunshi's expenses at the private clubhouse that day, as well as a list of the items in the clubhouse, asking for compensation. Gu Jinglian was quite domineering in this aspect. Originally, Song Zhenghua was still investigating which faction had beaten his son to such a state. Unexpectedly, Gu Jinglian had sent someone to call and give a summary of what had happened that night. In the end, not only did he righteously ask Song Zhenghua to compensate for all the damage done to the clubhouse, he even mocked. Song Yunshi, that brat, is so arrogant that he actually asked the Gu family to step in for the Song family. What a joke! Song Zhenghua was so angry that he vomited blood. Only then did Song Enya and Jiang Qiming know that Song Yunshi had gone to the Gu family, because she was indignant on behalf of her sister, hoping that the Gu family could help the Song family get back at them. In the end, she offended Gu Jinglian and ended up being beaten to such a state. Song Enya, in particular, was filled with regret when she heard all this. If she had not been a burden, her brother, father, and mother would not have ended up in such a state. Jiang Qiming was heating porridge when she heard Song Yunshi's surprised cry. She turned around and saw that Song Yunshi had regained consciousness. Nervously, she came forward and sat down by the bed. Yunshi, you're finally awake. God bless you. God bless you. Song Yunshi. After a brief moment of confusion, he finally realized where his body was and his eyes turned cold. Seeing that he did not speak, Jiang Qiming glanced at Song Enya worriedly and signaled with her eyes. Song Enya immediately understood. She held Song Yunshi's hand and asked gently, "Brother, how do you feel? Do you want some water? Or, would you like some apples? I'll peel it for you." Before she could finish speaking, Song Yunshi's overly cold reaction caused her to stop talking. Song Yunshi looked at her expressionlessly for a long time, but the look in his eyes became colder and colder. Suddenly, he gently pulled his hand out of her hand, looking extremely cold. Song Enya was stunned, clearly in disbelief. Song Yunshi had never treated her like this before. He had always doted on her like she was the apple of his eye. However, his reaction at this moment was so cold that it made one's heart palpitate. "Brother, what's wrong? Don't touch me." Song Yunshi turned around angrily. Even though it was difficult for him to turn around in his current condition, he did not seem to want to see her. He did not even want to say a word to her. Song Enya's heart ached when she saw his cold expression, and she retracted her hand resentfully. Looking at his cold back view, Song Enya's eyes could not help but turn red. She choked and said, "Brother, are you angry with me? I don't want to hear your voice." Chapter 2277. Yunshi. Jiang Qiming was frightened when she heard that. She hurriedly went forward and covered Song Yunshi's mouth. "You're seriously injured. Don't move around anymore. Lie on the bed properly. If you want anything, tell me. Okay? Don't talk nonsense." Song Yunshi gritted her teeth and suppressed her anger. She took a deep breath and finally calmed down. At the side, Song Enya lowered her head guiltily. Her eyes were already moist. Song Yunshi's words pierced her ears and pierced her heart. However, she did not blame him for saying such ruthless words. It was all her fault. She had been blinded by her wishful thinking. However, she knew that she was wrong. In the future, she would not do such a stupid thing. Song Enya's eyes were red. She opened her mouth a few times, but she hesitated. Did her brother hate her? Was that why he didn't say a word to her? He must be disappointed in her, right? With her back facing Song Enya, Song Yunshi said to Jiang Qiming in a low voice, "Mom, I don't feel well. I want to sit up and not lie down." "Yunshi." Jiang Qiming looked at him hesitantly. After pondering for a long time, she comforted him. "Just lie down like this. You're seriously injured now. It's not convenient for you to sit up." Song Yunshi finally realized that something was wrong with his body. He kept feeling that the numbness in many parts of his body was a little strange. He tried to sit up, but the moment he moved, a piercing pain instantly suffocated him. His hand trembled as he touched his chest. However, the moment he lifted his hand, he was shocked by the heart-wrenching pain. "Mom," Jiang Qiming immediately said. "Yunshi, you've just had surgery. Don't move around. Otherwise, if the incision splits, you'll suffer again. Surgery. Song Yunshi was a little surprised and turned pale with fright. What happened to me? Seeing that she could not hide it anymore, Jiang Qiming recounted his injuries. There were many fractures all over his body, including his ribs and shoulders, intracranial hemorrhage, moderate concussion. Song Yunshi's eyes turned cold when she heard this. With such serious injuries, then that would mean that his career in the team had come to an end. His father had spent a lot of money to get him into the military. As long as he persevered for a few more years, he would be able to achieve meteoric success and have a bright future. However, once he retired from the army and returned home at this critical juncture, all the sacrifices he had made over the years would all turn into smoke and vanish into thin air. How did this happen? Song Yunshi bit his lips hard, his eyes turning red from anger and unwillingness to accept the situation. Song Inya suddenly went to him and knelt before him, crying bitterly. Brother, it's all my fault. I was insensible. I shouldn't have done such a ridiculous thing. In the end, I implicated the Song family and you. I know I'm wrong. I'll never do it again. Inya. Jiang Qiming hurriedly went to help her. What's the use is an apology? The more Song Yunshi listened, the more the veins on his forehead bulged. He frowned and yelled at her. What's the point of apologizing? Song Inya, are you satisfied now? The Song family has been ruined by you. Father was destroyed by you. And I was also destroyed by you. Are you satisfied now? Are you happy now? Why are you crying again? Now that you're happy and have your wish fulfilled, shouldn't you be laughing out loud? Chapter 2278. Jiang Qiming cried as she stopped him. She held his wrist tightly, hoping that he would calm down. Yunshi, don't spout nonsense. How am I spouting nonsense? Song Yunshi pushed her hand away angrily, ignoring the injuries on his body. Even though his wounds were showing signs of opening due to this violent movement, he did not seem to feel pain and said coldly, Am I not telling the truth? Jiang Qiming's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. Song Yunshi sneered. Even now, you're still protecting her. Mom, I don't pity her at all. Inya, you still have the cheek to cry at this point? What about me? Are you satisfied that I've come to this? Since she was young, everyone in the family doted on and protected her. But in the end, our good intentions were treated as ill intent. Our love for her can't even compare to that heartless man. For that man, she ignored the family's interests and threw herself into the fire like a moth. But in the end, weren't we the ones who followed behind her and cleaned up the mess for her? How naive is a girl to want to get pregnant with that man's child at all costs? She even used such a despicable method. I really don't have the face to acknowledge this disappointing sister. What about now? Is she satisfied? Are you satisfied? In order to protect her reputation, father actually ceded that piece of land in Xiancheng to Muyaja. Do you know what this means? Song Inya finally could not take it anymore. She wailed and covered her face as she cried bitterly. Brother, stop talking. I know I was wrong. I've harmed you, Dad, and the Song family. I'll make it up to you. Song Yunshi smiled in despair. How do you want to make it up to me? How can you make it up to me? Things have already come to this point. Can you compensate the Song family for their losses? Song Inya cried helplessly like a child. She reached out to hold her brother's hand. Get lost. Song Yunshi shouted. I don't want to see you. Get lost. Brother. Scram. When Jiang Qiming heard this, she hugged Song Yunshi with heartache and gave Song Inya a look. Suppressing her indignation, she turned around and quietly left the room. Outside the door, she sat down on the bench in the corridor, her head lowered, and she hugged her shoulders helplessly. After Jiang Qiming comforted Song Yunshi to sleep, she walked out of the ward, sat down beside her, and handed her a cup of hot tea. Inya, your brother said those words because he was confused. Don't take it to heart. Yunshi, he still loves you very much. She nodded. I know. Don't be sad. You're pregnant now, so don't be too emotional. Try to control yourself. It'll be bad if the baby is affected. From tomorrow onwards, I'll stay in the hospital to take care of Yunxi. You just need to recuperate at home. Jiang Qiming instructed as she gently patted her daughter's back. Song Inya clenched her fists tightly. All of a sudden, because of this series of events, she hated Mu Yaja to the core. The amount of love one had for a person, once it turned into hatred, it would be hatred that seeped into the bones. Loving him was the most humble thing she had ever done. Ever since they were young, the two of them had been inseparable. During her youth he had occupied the most important part of her life. Chapter 2279. She thought that Brother Mu liked her, too. The only reason he avoided her was because of social norms. However, she had been quietly working hard to get close to him and enter his heart, until she saw the man she loved standing with another woman. Yin Shirshir. What was so good about this woman? She racked her brains for a long time, but still could not figure out what she had lost to her. In terms of family background, she came from a prestigious family and was high and mighty, but that woman was just a commoner with no power or influence. In terms of looks, Song Inya did not think that she was inferior in any way. Looks would eventually wither with time. So what if she was so beautiful? In terms of personality, she was also gentle and considerate. Moreover, she should be the one who understood Brother Mu the most. However, she was looking forward to him changing his mind, but she did not expect the man she loved to get closer and closer to another woman. She was indignant, so she took an unconventional approach later on. She could not figure it out. She really could not figure it out. They were both pregnant, so why was Yin Shirshir able to get his approval because of the two children? Why couldn't she? She had to admit that this unconventional action was completely imitating her own actions. Back then, Yin Shirshir gave birth to two children for Brother Mu as a surrogate. After that, the two of them could get closer to each other because of the children. So why couldn't she? In order to have this child, she had put in a lot of effort and paid a huge price. She had risked everything and embezzled her father's assets. In order to successfully get pregnant, she had endured a lot of pain. Every night, she had to beg the heavens for their blessings and blessings, so that she could successfully get pregnant. Finally, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevered. She was finally pregnant. Pregnant with his child. However, in the end he casually said that he had already tampered with this operation. She was like a monkey being played, or even a clown. She had no idea that her actions were already under his control. She was as naive as a fool and allowed herself to be manipulated by him. By the time she came to her senses, it was already too late. Now that she thought about it, her actions were pitifully stupid. She hated it. I hate him to the bone. She clenched her fists in anger as her tears fell one by one onto her body. Regret, hatred, and pain were entrenched in his heart. She couldn't accept it. She really couldn't accept it. Now that her brother had become like this, she was partly responsible for it. If it wasn't for her, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Calm down, Inya. Jiang Qiming hugged her daughter anxiously and consoled her patiently. Since I can see that you've thought things through and seen through that man, then you should give up on him. He abandoned you, so what's the point of thinking about him? What you need to do now is to quietly recuperate, and when the time comes, climb up the pole. However, this is a blessing in disguise. With this child, at least we have one last bargaining chip in our hands. What do you mean? Your child is Mu Yanqing's. That lad is very likely to be the future head of the Mu family. If you're pregnant with his child, that'll truly be a mother relying on her son. So, you don't have to think about those trivial things now. Take good care of your body and raise the child in your belly well. That's the most important thing. The most important thing right now. Chapter 2280. Song Inya wanted to say something but hesitated. She opened her mouth a few times but was too embarrassed to speak. What's wrong? Jiang Qiming looked at her in surprise. Haven't you thought it through, or are you unwilling? Song Inya remained silent. Jiang Qiming continued to persuade her. Look at how that woman bullied you and trampled you under her feet. Now, she's obviously waiting to see you make a fool of yourself. Are you willing to let her laugh at you like this? After a pause, she continued. Do you think I'm bad for you? Of course, I hope that you can lead a good life. Although Mu Yanqing isn't the head of the family in name yet, Mu Linfeng has the intention of supporting him to this position. Is Mu Linfeng arranging a marriage for him? You should know that Mu Linfeng is definitely the head of a big family like the Mu family. What does it mean that he can personally arrange a marriage for Mu Yanqing? This means that Mu Linfeng values him and wants to groom him. That's why he's putting in so much effort to support him. If you two succeed, the songs will add fuel to the fire, and Mu Yanqing will naturally become the head of the family in no time. When that time comes, you'll be the glorious young mistress of the Mu family. This means that the songs will be able to make a comeback. When you become the matriarch of the Mu family, who will look down on you? Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, bet on the wrong thing. Yaja stepped down from his position and became a pauper with nothing. What good life can she have with that man? You, on the other hand, will be glorious after marrying into the Mu family. It'll be her turn to look up to you and be envious of you. When that time comes, won't she be trampled under your feet? Song Inya was moved by her words. That's right. Anyway, love had long become a thing of the past for her. She no longer thought about it or missed it. She might as well seize the opportunity and go with the flow. Jiang Qiming sighed again and said, "You're all grown up now. There are some things that I want to tell you. When you find a man, you must find someone who loves you. A woman should still take herself seriously. Yaja, that child, is stubborn. Once he recognizes what he wants, he'll always act on his own. I admit that he's very outstanding, but what did you get in return for chasing after him? No matter how good a gift was, men would never treat it as a big deal. If you and Yanqing can be together, it's fine even if you don't have feelings for him. You don't love him and he doesn't love you, but this relationship can be nurtured in the future. Love is just a pastime. Now that you've let go, it's time to think about your future. So what if you're together with Yaja? He doesn't have any power or influence, and your close friends will only look down on you even more. Things are different now that you're with Mu Yanqing. Once you become the young mistress of the family, people will definitely be envious of you. Do you to be the one who is to be looked to be the one who is to be the envy of others? It's all up to your whim. There's nothing. You should rejoice that you've come to your senses in time and are no longer obstinate. 2. What do you mean? Chapter 2281. This question was a test for Jiang Qiming. She pondered for a while, only to hear Song Inya's nagging. Mu Yanqing will definitely find it ridiculous and think that I'm shameless. Besides, didn't you say that the Mu family is arranging a marriage for him? I heard that Uncle Mu has set his eyes on the Lin family's third daughter, Lin Shuya. If I take the initiative to look for him, won't I just be throwing myself at him? After a pause, she continued reluctantly. Besides, if I say that I'm pregnant with his child, it's another matter whether he'll believe me or not. He hasn't even touched me before. If his child appeared out of nowhere in my stomach, he'll definitely think that I'm ridiculous. I don't want that to happen. She took a deep breath and smiled bitterly. Besides, I've already done 2 paternity tests. If I do a third time, I'm afraid that I won't be able to keep the child. Mom, it wasn't easy to get this child. I don't want to take the risk. If I lose this child, who knows how much suffering the next one will have to go through. Mom, what should I do? I'll think of another way. Jiang Qiming frowned and comforted her as she fell into deep thought. Just as Song Inya was hesitating, she heard a hint of excitement appear on her mother's face. You said that you've never interacted with him before. Yes. Then can't we just create an opportunity for intimate contact? Jiang Qiming said matter-of-factly. Huh? Song Inya could not figure out what her mother was thinking. Jiang Qiming said, I heard that Mu Yanqing is a well-behaved man on the surface, but he has played with many women outside. He should be frequenting places like nightclubs and bars. When this matter with Yunxi is over, I'll find an opportunity to make some arrangements, and this matter will naturally come to fruition. Jiang Qiming did not seem to realize how despicable her method was. Song Inya was also bewitched by her words and asked, What's the plan? You'll know when the time comes. Can't you say it now? She was a little unhappy. Mom, if you want me to cooperate, why don't you say it now? It's good to let me be mentally prepared. Don't be caught off guard when the time comes. I've already told you. Don't feel awkward and refuse to cooperate when the time comes. Jiang Qiming paused for a moment before she told him the idea she had in mind. So that was what she was thinking. Doesn't Mu Yanqing frequent nightclubs? When the time came, she would arrange for some people to deliberately get him drunk or spike his drink with ecstasy. Then they would bring him to the hotel and let him share a room with her. Then he would do some tricks. When he woke up at dawn and saw Song Inya sharing a bed with him, he would naturally suspect that he had slept with her because he was drunk last night. Wouldn't that give him a good reason to do so? In that case, the child would naturally have a solid foundation. When the time came, he would naturally be able to negotiate with Mu Yanqing with his conditions. Given the Song family's status and background, as long as they were willing to negotiate terms with him, Mu Yanqing would eventually agree. Song Inya's face flushed red when she heard this. She felt that what Jiang Qiming did was no different from selling her out. But now that things had developed to this point, she couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. Chapter 2282. Song Inya nodded hesitantly and muttered, I got it. You can make the arrangements when the time comes. Anyway, just tell me what to do and I'll cooperate. Inya, that's a good girl. Jiang Qiming was satisfied with her understanding. What about Lin Shuya then? Song Inya suddenly raised her doubts. The Lins and the Songs are of similar status. Most importantly, the Lins are also a prestigious family with a strong background. Mu Yanqing will definitely lean toward them. When the time comes, what if he insists on having Lin Shuya and not me? You're already pregnant with his child. When the time comes, he won't be able to make excuses. Jiang Qiming did not care. She had interacted with Lin Shuya a few times. She was proud and arrogant and would not take Mu Yanqing seriously. Mu Yanqing would only be bullied by her. When the time came, she would gather some evidence and find something against Lin Shuya to throw in front of Mu Linfeng. When the time came, she would have the capital to negotiate. Moreover, they were already pregnant. The Mu family valued heirs the most. A mother's status would rise because of her son. This trick was tried and tested. With Mu Yanqing's child, she would have full confidence. At the thought of this, Jiang Qiming patted her shoulder reassuringly and said, You don't have to worry about the rest. Do as I say. I definitely won't harm you. You just have to think about how to be an elegant young mistress of the Mu family. From today onwards, you can't be as spoiled as before. Stay at home and learn some red tape. These will come in handy when you enter the Mu family. Since you've already made up your mind, it's time for you to focus. Although the plan had not been implemented yet, Jiang Qiming had already taught her how to be a young mistress of the Mu family. Song Inya nodded and clenched the corner of her shirt. She pursed her lips, but her thoughts were complicated. Her heart for Mu Yaja was already dead. All that was left was hatred and hatred for him. Since she had set her goal, she could only continue to pursue it without hesitation. As for the old and new grudges, she would settle them all once she stepped into the Mu family's door. At the thought of this, the corners of her lips curled up into a cold and eerie smile. It was a fulfilling and happy new year until the 15th day of the first lunar month. Yin Shishir's days were peaceful and comfortable. Without the hassle of work, this new year was incomparably comfortable. On the second day of the new year, she and Mu Yaja brought along the two Xiaobao girls and went to the Maldives for a holiday. It wasn't until the moment she boarded the plane that she found out that a certain meticulous man had already planned this vacation. The plane tickets and hotel were all booked a month in advance. New Year was the peak season for tourism in the Maldives. Many of the hotels were overcrowded, and the demand could not meet the demand. For this reason, Mu Yaja booked a 5-star hotel and first-class tickets a month in advance, taking the lead in seizing the golden resources of the holiday. But he had never mentioned it to her. On the morning of the second day of the new year, he woke her up with a morning exercise that was good for her physical and mental health. In the aftertaste of their lovemaking, he whispered in her ear, "Pack your luggage right away. We're going on a vacation." Yin Shishir was surprised. "Where are we going?" The man smiled mysteriously and slightly curled his lips. "The Maldives. The Maldives. Oh God." Chapter 2283. The blue sky, the endless sea, the clear water, and even the hotel under the sea. Every time she thought of these, she felt a surge of emotions. She had always wanted to go to the Maldives, but she had never had the time. More importantly, she had gone abroad once, and it was especially troublesome. Hence, she had only had beautiful fantasies about the Maldives and had never had the chance to go. She had not expected this man to give her such a surprise. But how would she know? Muyaja knew that she had always dreamed of going to the Maldives because he had flipped through her diary. He was fulfilling all the wishes she had written down. The Maldives was just one of her dreams. However, on the plane, Muyaja glanced at Gong Jie, who was sitting beside Yu and leisurely flipping through financial magazines. He was in a bad mood. Why is he following us? Yin Shishir said awkwardly. Well, Gong Jie seemed to have heard Muyaja's unhappy question. He smiled and said, "It's not a honeymoon. Why can't I tag along?" Yu looked up and glanced at the unhappy man. Then, she looked at Gong Jie, who was smiling wickedly. She raised her eyebrows. Xiao Yichen said quietly, "Uncle, Daddy is disdaining you for shamelessly tagging along to be a third wheel." Third wheel? Gong Jie did not take it to heart. He pinched his cheeks and snorted coldly. "If I'm a third wheel, aren't the two of you spoiling the fun too? Why can the two of you tag along but I can't?" Xiao Yichen smiled and said, "Because we are Mommy's little tails. Mommy won't be able to shake us off no matter what." Yu asked curiously, "Then what's uncle?" Xiao Yichen smiled and said, "I'm the head of the third wheel." Gong Jie was speechless. Head of the third wheel? What kind of stupid term was that? Yin Shishir was so amused that her stomach hurt from holding back her laughter. Gong Jie gave her a bitter look. "Sis," she was still smiling. Yin Shishir forced herself to hold back and smiled. "Xiao Jie, since you're here, I'll leave these two kids to you." "What?" Xiao Yichen giggled and couldn't help but say, "Uncle has changed from a third wheel to a nanny." "Get lost." Gong Jie proudly turned his face away and expressed his stance. "I'm here for a vacation, not to be a nanny. Wherever big sister goes, I will go too." Muyaja's face darkened. What a killjoy. He didn't know what kind of method this kid had used. She clearly didn't book his ticket, but he was actually able to board the plane in such a grand manner. Gong Jie, however, laughed. What a joke. This airline company was controlled by Hurricane Group. Hurricane Group started out as a smuggler. As their territory expanded, they gradually expanded into sea transportation, air transportation, and land transportation. Out of the top 10 airlines in the world, Hurricane Group controlled 5 of them. As the crown prince of Hurricane Group, it was easy for him to book a plane. He was still keeping a low profile. If he had asked to book a plane, the passengers on the plane, including that annoying brother-in-law of his, would have been chased off the plane and obediently waited at the airport for the next flight. He was being merciful. Book a plane ticket. What a joke. Chapter 2284. Yu thought to himself, Daddy will surely feel aggrieved if he finds out about this, but there's nothing I can do about it. Who asked him to choose this airline? Who asked the private airline under his name to be temporarily frozen because of the Mu Group? He was lucky that his passport was not frozen. However, even if his uncle kicked his dear and adorable father off the plane, he would still carry his father up again. The Maldives Islands, the necklace that God had sprinkled on earth, was the last paradise in the Indian Ocean. The Republic of Maldives was located in South Asia. It was an island country consisting of more than 1,200 small coral islands, 202 of which were inhabited. Since there was a rainy season from May to September, it was the best season to travel from October to April. Before the registration, Gong Jie suggested that they go to the Huvefin Fusher Hotel. Hence, Muyaja changed the hotel at the last minute and upgraded it to a 7-star hotel. Alas, Muyaja's face, which had just relaxed a little, darkened at the sight of his nephew. Was he a dogskin plaster? I will go wherever my sister goes. She was on his bed. Did this guy want to sleep with her too? Yu glanced at Muyaja's expression and knew that Daddy was unhappy. Hence, he tugged at Gong Jie's sleeve and said in a low voice, Uncle, you can't ruin Daddy and Mommy's trip this time. You can't ruin it. Ruin it. Ruin it. Gong Jie snorted and said arrogantly, I don't have time for that. Then why are you sticking to me? Yu asked cautiously. Don't tell me you're going to hunt for girls. Gong Jie bit his straw and curled his lips coldly. Boring. Uncle, how many days of annual leave did the hurricane group give you? Why do you look like you have nothing to do? The annual performance target has been reached. I have half a month of annual leave this year. Oh, you suddenly took the drink from his hand and took a sip. She warned. Anyway, you'd better behave during this trip and not cause any trouble. It's rare for mommy to go on a trip. Don't disturb her mood. Woo. Gong Jia narrowed his eyes pitifully and complained. You're biased. How am I biased? Gong Jia felt wronged. I'm your uncle. I love you so much, but you're protecting your daddy. He paused and spread his hands. I gave you that island for free. Give it back. Yu said in disdain. How can you take back what you've given away? Shameless. You have no conscience. The gifts you gave me were all one-sided. I didn't force you or blackmail you. There's no reason to take it back. Xiao Chen also persuaded him patiently. That's right, uncle. Men should be gentlemanly. Gong Jia was speechless. However, under the pressure of Yu and Xiao Chen, Gong Jia finally promised that he wouldn't cause any trouble during this trip. The 5 of them were divided into 2 groups and were free to move around. Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir went to the Lotus Flower Powder Island. Gong Jia and Little Chen, on the other hand, went to another island. When they were about to get off the plane, Yu suddenly thought of something and asked curiously, Uncle, aren't you bringing bodyguards with you on this trip? No need. Why? Chapter 2285. That's because I have Xiao Chen. No way. Yu pulled Xiao Chen into his camp and emphasized, Xiao Chen is my personal bodyguard. Uncle, don't covet him. I'm not afraid. Gong Jia said proudly. I bought the island we're going to 2 years ago. All the facilities on the island, including the hotel, bar and resort, are under my name. Yu did not listen to him though. Instead, he turned to Little Chen and reminded him, remember this. Uncle is a super dangerous person. The number of people who want to assassinate him can line up from here to Paris. If anything happens, you take me with you and run. If necessary, keep a distance from him so that you don't get caught up in it. Little Chen nodded solemnly at his father's serious explanation. Gong Jia frowned when he heard this. He grabbed Yu's ear and complained, why are you so heartless? Yu sneered. I'm telling the truth. What he said was not false at all. Hurricane Group was the world's largest arms group, and was known as the Empire of Terror. Gong Jia, as the chief commander of the North American and European markets, was known as the Merchant of Death. He owned more than 100 cargo planes and more than 50 supercargo ships. He controlled more than 1,200 shipping routes around the world, and was fluent in 6 languages. He could be said to be the most important person in Hurricane Group. Danger was always lurking around him. Not only that, but he was also blacklisted by many governments. He even made it to the top 10 of the FBI's wanted list. In that case, he was indeed a terrorist. Some time ago, he had offended many leaders of terrorist organizations in order to expand his territory and get a share of the pie. He was in charge of the European and North American markets, but he had extended his ambition to the African market. In the past 3 years, Gong Jia had made use of the intelligence agency's resources and operations to reach a transaction agreement. He had almost monopolized the majority of the market's profits from 32 battles of various sizes in 29 African countries, and earned countless profits. The profits were enough to make many people jealous. Last year he had hundreds of billions of dollars worth of orders under his name, and became the leader of Hurricane Group. Of course, it was enough to make people jealous. Gong Xiaoying was dissatisfied. Every market had its own person in charge. The African market had always been under someone else's charge. Gong Jia was breaking the rules by meddling in other markets. Gong Jia said coldly, the African market is the most fertile market, but it has been unable to meet the target for many years. Hurricane Group doesn't need such a useless person in charge. I am doing this because I want to prove that the African market has the highest potential. Gong Xiaoying was left speechless by her words. In his eyes, his son was extraordinary. There were not many people who could gain his approval, but Gong Jia was definitely one of them. However, although Gong Xiaoying did not approve of his actions, he also recognized his talent. Therefore, for a long time after that, Gong Xiaoying sent 5 more mercenary groups to protect him. But in fact, Gong Jie had offended more than that. From the European governments to the terrorist organizations, there were too many organizations that had put him on the wanted list. No wonder you described him as a dangerous person. Chapter 2286. The group arrived at the island. On the other side, Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja had also settled down at the hotel. After checking in, she entered the room. Initially, she was still a little worried about the 2 little guys. They were unfamiliar with the place, so it was inevitable that she would be worried. Although she had gotten rid of the 3 huge light bulbs, there was only the 2 of them left, and she felt empty around them. Perhaps it was because they were not used to being alone for a while. However, after a short psychological battle, Yun Shishir thought that although the 2 little guys were a little mischievous, there should be nothing to worry about with Gong Jie around. The hotel they booked was a water house. As the name suggested, it was a hotel where there was seawater outside. The hotel Muyaja booked was a super luxurious 7-star hotel. It had more than 300 square meters of space, a living room, a garden, a balcony, and so on. Everything was available. What was even more shocking was that in such a hotel, when one pushed open the balcony door, there was a long wooden corridor. At the end, there was an escalator that led straight to the seawater. Sitting on the escalator, stepping on the seawater and basking in the sun, was definitely an incomparably comfortable experience. This was going to be a perfect island vacation. She was looking forward to it. There were no tourist attractions on the island, nor were there any bustling tourists. In their free time, they could step on the fine white sand or go into the seawater to swim with the fish. When they were tired, they could go to a spa to relax. When they were hungry, they could sit on the balcony and enjoy a seafood feast while facing the sea breeze. When she woke up in the morning, the first thing she saw was the person she loved the most. The second thing she saw was the endless blue sea outside the window. This was probably her most beautiful fantasy about the Maldives. However, this vacation would probably cost a lot of money. If it were in the past, Yun Shishir would definitely not be worried about such a huge expenditure. However, this man had just stepped down from his position as the head of the family. She vaguely heard that after handing over the power of the Mu Corporation, the accounts were tight. She did not know if this vacation would cost a lot of money. With such concerns, she took advantage of the fact that there were only the 2 of them and pulled him aside to ask, "This vacation in the Maldives should cost a lot, right?" Mu Yaja turned around and glanced at her. He smirked and said, "You don't have to worry about that. You just have to think about how to enjoy your vacation. That's enough." "Why not?" Yun Shishir smiled disapprovingly. "We're already husband and wife. We shouldn't hide anything from each other. Actually, my dream holiday destination is the Maldives. I didn't expect you to have already arranged this holiday for me. But I heard that you've been tight on money recently. I heard from Jinyu that you've invested some assets outside. After leaving the Mu Group, you still have some businesses under your name. If you want to operate these businesses, you'll definitely need a huge capital chain. But since you've severed all ties with Mu Group, your finances must be tight. I'm just worried. Don't let these meaningless expenses drag you down." "What do you mean by meaningless expenses?" Mu Yaja smiled helplessly and turned around to hug her gently. He kissed her on the forehead and said, "After we got married, other than the engagement ceremony, it seems like we haven't spent time together for a long time." And when the man said this, Yun Shishir immediately blushed. She lowered her eyes and softly said, Chapter 2287. Despite what he said, she could not help but worry. "But we have so much time together in the future. We can enjoy our vacation anytime, not at this critical juncture. How can I enjoy it in peace if it affects your development?" Mu Yaja could not help but laugh. This was probably why this little woman was both adorable and hateful. She was always thinking of him. Perhaps it was because she had been living a hard life for too long. She had always been diligent and thrifty, so it was inevitable that she felt that going on a luxurious trip would be extravagant and wasteful. But in reality, she did not have to worry about this at all. You don't have to worry about the expenses of this trip at all. As for what you're worried about, the truth is that there were some problems with the capital chain some time ago, but it's all under my control. I've already calculated that leaving the muse will bring about a series of difficulties, but I've already expected it, so I've made arrangements in advance. Song Enya was one of the most important links. Song Zhenghua had already agreed to allocate the land in Xiancheng to him. In less than 2 days, the signing ceremony would be held. With this piece of land, coupled with a new round of financing after the 15th day of the first lunar month, the capital chain should recover. Yin Shishir probably did not expect that this man had already planned everything ahead of time, so it was inevitable that she had many doubts. Yin Shishir kissed him and rebuked. "I'm just worried." He smiled. "I know. But since we're here, let's just enjoy it without any distractions. There's no point in worrying about anything else. It's better to enjoy this vacation wholeheartedly." "All right. I got it." Muyaja suddenly hugged her. "Oh right. There's one more thing." Yin Shishir looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Muyaja gently pecked her pink lips and smiled. "Shishir, let's get married." "Shishir, let's get married." Because of this sudden surprise, Yin Shishir could not help but widen her eyes in disbelief. Get married? In her imagination, there was still a long way to go before an official wedding. The man promised her that he would arrange the wedding as soon as possible. However, she imagined that with so many things happening recently, the wedding couldn't be planned in a hurry. However, she was not in a hurry, but the man was. He couldn't wait to see his beloved woman in a wedding dress, appearing gracefully in front of him. Therefore, things that were originally planned for a long time were put on the agenda. Yes. After we're done with this, we'll start preparing for the wedding. However, Yin Shishir was worried. Isn't it a little too rushed? I promised you that I would give you a wedding that would attract the attention of the entire world. Since I said so, I naturally have to keep my promise. However, since we want to make it grand, we have to prepare in advance so that we won't be flustered when the time comes. Muyaja paused, muttered to himself for a moment, and then said, "There's no need to consider the matrimonial house. Yinshan Shiyi's manor will be our matrimonial house." Speaking of which, originally, Muyaja had planned to recover the assets of Xiangtiwok after he left the Mu family. After all, these assets belonged to the Mu family. Since Muyaja had left the Mu family, he had nothing to do with them anymore. Chapter 2288. In addition, Yinshan Shiyi's assets had long been under Jiang Yishan's name by Mu Sheng. This property already belonged to Muyaja, so Mu Linfeng had no right to tamper with it. Muyaja had long been wary of this. Hence, before this, he had already privately changed the ownership of many properties. Now that he had left the Mu family, he looked down and out on the surface, but in reality, Mu Linfeng was secretly stomping his feet in anger. With Muyaja's departure, many of the Mu family's assets had been divided. Not only was the Mu group greatly damaged, but it was also helpless. Since the bridal chamber was already settled, the rest of the matters would be much smoother. How do we prepare for the wedding? Yin Shishir was a little lost. This was her first time preparing for a wedding, so it was inevitable that her mind would go blank. She did not know what else to prepare. Muyaja said in annoyance, "Little fool, there are many things to prepare for a wedding. For example, the wedding dress you'll wear during the wedding needs to be specially custom-made. Aside from the decorations, before that, we have to prepare for the wedding photos." Ah. Wedding photos. At the mention of wedding photos, Yin Shishir's eyes lit up at his reminder. Muyaja could not help but laugh. "Why? Do you have any thoughts about wedding photos?" Yin Shishir pursed her lips and smiled with her eyes narrowed. "I do have some thoughts, haha. Where do you want to go for the photos?" "Aya, if I knew that this trip would be in the Maldives, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take wedding photos here." Yin Shishir rebuked. "Why didn't you remind me earlier?" Other than the Maldives, there are many other options for wedding photos. For example, Muyaja said, Paris, France. I heard that it's very romantic to take wedding photos there. I knew it. Fontainebleau Palace in France is one of the biggest palaces in France. We can go there for the photos. Oh, seeing that Yin Shishir was deep in thought, Muyaja asked, "What other suggestions do you have?" "I used to fantasize about going to Prague to take wedding photos. It's very romantic there. There's a melancholy mystery there, with Romanesque and Gothic architecture, and many medieval-style buildings. Okay. Actually, Yun Shirshir suddenly, she said. Actually, we can take photos anywhere. It's important to look good. If it's a famous photographer, it will be beautiful no matter where it's taken. Don't worry about that. I've already made an appointment with a photographer. We just need to decide on the location. Mankey Smith, one of the world's top masters. He's photographers. Mankey the royal family, Mankey's royal family's wedding previously, when the Mu family, SA family photo families Mu's Azaz's family S. Yun Shirshir did not know that the photographer whom the man had hired was the best in the world. If she were to find out, she would probably be in for quite a shock. It was said that Mankey's pay was calculated on an hourly basis, $10,000 per hour. And this was the price that Mu Yaja bargained with him. If Yun Shirshir knew that Mu Yaja had learned how to bargain, she would probably be overjoyed. Mu Yaja said, "It's okay. Think about where you want to take the photos. Wedding photos are a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Of course, you have to make the most of it." Haha. If you let me do as I please, you might just declare bankruptcy after the wedding photos. Chapter 2289. You said it yourself. Don't regret it when the time comes. Just as the two of them were enjoying their vacation in the Maldives, the contract signing ceremony for Xian Cheng's land was carried out as scheduled. At the city government building, Jiang Shen and Lu Jinyu were in charge of this matter. Due to Song Jinggua's health, he did not appear in person and left it to someone else. In just an hour, the contract signing ceremony was successfully completed. Xingyu Financial Group successfully obtained the development rights of Xian Cheng's land at a price of a few million yuan. Song Jinggua was probably regretting it so much that his intestines were turning green. If not for this accident, this piece of land would not have been a problem at the auction for more than 1 billion yuan. A few million yuan was the price of a cabbage. No wonder Song Jinggua claimed to be ill. If he were to see Xian Cheng's land fall into Mu Yaja's hands with his own eyes, he would be so angry that he would faint. On the other hand, when the Mu group received this news, they were completely unaware that it was Mu Yaja's doing. After the Lantern Festival, the announcement of Mu Yaja's resignation as CEO was about to be announced. The Mu group was already in a mess, especially Mu Linfeng. Even during the new year, he was extremely busy. For the first time during the new year, everyone in the Mu group worked overtime without any holidays. The company was filled with complaints. On the other hand, the Lin family also replied that they would arrange for the two children to meet during the new year to get to know each other. When Mu Linfeng received the news, he immediately made the arrangements. Mu Yanqing was even more on guard. Mu Linfeng repeatedly requested that this meeting was a rare opportunity, and that they must seize it well. Naturally, Mu Yanqing repeatedly promised that he would not let this rare opportunity go to waste. On the other hand, Lin Buoxiong had also persuaded Lin Xueya. Perhaps because she was disappointed in Hua Jin, coupled with Lin Buoxiong's harsh words, Lin Xueya knew that it was impossible between her and Hua Jin. After locking herself in her room for a day and a night, she seemed to have completely thought it through and agreed to this matter. In any case, it did not matter who she married if it was not Hua Jin. Lin Xueya felt like a walking corpse. Whatever Lin Buoxiong told her to do, she would do it without any hesitation. Lin Buoxiong was deeply satisfied. That night, Mu Yanqing dressed up especially grandly. The meeting was arranged to take place at the Mu Group's hotel, and he went there early. Lin Xueya requested again and again that only the two of them were needed for this meeting. She did not need anyone else to accompany her. Hence Mu Linfeng did not go. Although Lin Buoxiong was worried that something might go wrong if she went alone, he was also worried that if he insisted on accompanying her, it would arouse her rebellious heart. Therefore, he gave up on accompanying her. Both of them were young. If there were no elders present, they would not be so restrained. Perhaps the two of them would be satisfied with each other after talking to each other. Perhaps they would fall in love with each other. Lin Xueya arrived at 7 o'clock in the evening as promised. When she pushed open the door to the private room, she saw Mu Yanqing sitting on the sofa in a well-ironed suit. When he saw her, he immediately stood up with a flushed face and gracefully walked up to her. Standing in front of her, he gave her a gentlemanly bow and extended his hand. "Hello, Miss Lin. I'm Mu Yenqing. Please forgive me for my lack of hospitality." Chapter 2290. Mu Yenqing's heart sank. Lin Xueya said nonchalantly, "Although this is the first time we're meeting, there's no need for all these formalities. There's no need to put on a show for anyone." With that, she arrogantly bypassed him and walked toward the sofa. Her neglect caused the polite smile on Mu Yenqing's face to inevitably freeze in awkwardness. He retracted his hand somewhat uneasily. It was said that Lin Xueya, the third daughter of the Lin family, had a rebellious temperament. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, it seemed that she was indeed difficult to tame. However, her reaction had also stimulated his primitive desire to conquer. He smiled and sat down on the sofa, facing her. Faced with the aloof Lin Xueya, Mu Yenqing excitedly made a brief exchange of pleasantries. However, even though he prided himself on being witty and humorous, Lin Xueya's face remained cold and expressionless from beginning to end. Mu Yenqing was depressed. This woman was much more difficult to deal with than he had expected. She did not respond, and the atmosphere fell into an awkward one. She did not speak, and even though Mu Yenqing was full of enthusiasm, he did not know how to continue the conversation. He could not help but furrow his brows. The scene was still and the atmosphere was so tense that even he, a hunter of love, felt uneasy and helpless. Lin Xueya suddenly laughed. "Mu Yenqing, do you really take this meeting seriously? I thought that you were just like me and were just going through the motions. How is that possible?" Despite his displeasure, Mu Yenqing maintained a polite smile on his face. "Miss Xueya, I take this meeting very seriously. After all, this is the beginning of our relationship, and I sincerely hope that we can have a good start." "Oh, how patient," Lin Xueya said indifferently. "Still, it's not surprising. After all, for the sake of the family head position, it's important to choose a strong marriage partner." Mu Yenqing's face froze for a moment. "Isn't that so?" Lin Xueya mocked. "To put it bluntly, both families have their own selfish motives for this marriage alliance. Your second uncle arranged this marriage in hopes of helping you become the family head. You, on the other hand, are a disappointment. Born of a concubine, you're lowly. If you want to become the family head, you naturally have to increase your bargaining chip." Her bluntness inevitably made it hard for others to get out of the awkward situation. Mu Yenqing flew into a rage out of humiliation at first. He almost lost his cool, but after calming himself down, he smiled instead. Miss Lin is a straightforward person. He immediately relaxed his posture, and was too lazy to put on an act in front of her. "What about you? Since you know the reason why my second uncle arranged this meeting, why are you still willing to come? Because in any case, it's not up to you to decide on your marriage. So what's the point of being so calculative?" Lin Xueya paused and smiled coldly. "However, if I'm willing to marry you, I hope you won't mind." "What? After we get married, I won't ask about your private life, and you won't interfere with my private life. You can have a woman outside, you can mess around, I won't interfere. But at the same time, I have a man, and you are not allowed to interfere. What do you think?" Mu Yenqing's face darkened instantly. "Are you negotiating with me? Even if you want to negotiate, you need to have the capital to do so." Chapter 2291. Mu Yenqing's face remained impassive, but he sneered inwardly. This Lin Xueya. She was more interesting than he had imagined. She actually said such shocking words. Not only did she allow him to have a mistress outside, but he thought that she was a magnanimous woman when he heard half of her words. He did not expect her to follow up with a warning that he was not to interfere if she had a man outside. She was openly accusing him of being a cuckold. She was willing to meet him, so he thought that she was sincere in wanting to get to know him better. He did not expect her to deliberately disgust him. Not too much. Was it not too much to say that he had a green thumb above his head? He could tell that she did not like him. She even hated him to the core. Both of them had rebellious personalities, especially Lin Xueya, who was even more rebellious. So, was she trying to force him to retreat with such disgusting words? Did she think that he would give up and shrink back, just because she said that? Dream on. Mu Yenqing was ambitious. but at the same time, he knew very well what he wanted. Lin Shuya could not help bursting into laughter when she saw him trying to suppress his anger, while pretending to be magnanimous. Don't tell me you think that it's only right and proper for you to have a fling outside while I'm despicable and filthy for having a string of relationships outside? I don't like double standards. Mu Yanqing smiled. What makes you think that I won't behave myself and indulge in extramarital affairs after we get married? Lin Shuya smiled. Learn from the mistakes of others. Mu Yaja was stunned. What do you mean? Lin Shuya said. I've seen many such marriages, so I have such thoughts. Not to mention others. Even her parents had the same type of marriage. Her father had a few young and beautiful women outside, and 2 of them were even students from prestigious universities. Her mother, on the other hand, was equally unruly. On the surface, she appeared to be well educated, but deep down, she was unwilling to be left out. She had grown up in such an environment, so she did not have any expectations for such a marriage. It was not that she had never fantasized about staying by one person's side for the rest of her life and growing old together, but now such an ideal marriage seemed as distant as a fairy tale. Besides, if it was not Huajin, it did not matter who the man was. Life is short. In a life without love, it was not fun to play with anyone. It was just a marriage in name, so there was no need to take it seriously. Lin Shuya paused for a moment and smiled. Besides, don't you have many women outside now? He heard that one of them was called Meng Qingxue. You haven't broken up with that woman yet, have you? Mu Yanqing's lips twitched slightly. It seemed that this woman had come prepared. On the surface, he seemed to be calm and collected, but before he came here, he probably already knew about Zhang Xian's background. He said coldly, she's just a dispensable woman. Before we get married, I'll cut off all ties with her. After marriage, you will be my only woman. Haha, don't joke around. Lin Shuya sneered. Once this marriage is connected, it will only be in name. Even if you stick to me, I won't cling to you. After all, no one can force me to share a bed with a man I don't like or even hate. Chapter 2292. Mu Yanqing nearly flew into a rage out of humiliation. Suppressing his anger, he said unhurriedly, I heard that Miss Lin studied abroad for a few years during your university days. It seems that your mindset has become the same as those foreigners. This is the first time I've seen such a shocking mindset. Lin Shuya continued. To put it bluntly, I can marry you and give you a status, but you can forget about the rest. Mu Yanqing glared at her angrily and slowly clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. That D***M and Lin Shuya. This was the first time they met, and he had already humiliated him so much. Is this condition very difficult to accept? Lin Shuya seemed to be deliberately provoking him as her words became sharper. Mu Yanqing, marrying you is the wish of the elders. However, if you want to touch me, you'll have to see if I'm willing or not. The key is... She sized him up casually, her red lips parting as she spat out contemptuously. Are you fit, or not? Lin Shuya. Mu Yanqing was finally completely enraged. He stood up abruptly, pointed at her, and complained angrily. You're too much. How noble do you think you are? On the surface, you look educated and reasonable, but I didn't expect you to be so frivolous and despicable. Then don't marry me. Lin Shuya shrugged innocently and said playfully, I'm not forcing you to marry me. I'm just saying this up front. If you're willing, we'll get engaged. If you can't accept it, then leave. Mu Yanqing sneered without thinking. Lin Shuya, who do you think you are? Do you think that I have to marry you? That it has to be you? Don't think too highly of yourself. I'm the daughter of a military family and the 3rd daughter of the Lin family. Just based on these halos, it's enough for me to think too highly of myself. Lin Shuya paused and pursed her red lips slightly. Suddenly, she took out a cigarette box and smoked a cigarette. Her every movement had the unrestrained temperament of a woman from the secular world. She took out a lighter and lit the cigarette with ease. She took a puff and exhaled slowly, revealing her white teeth. Her smile was charming, but it seemed to be some kind of deliberate provocation. If the man sitting in front of me this time was Muyaja, perhaps I would be willing to suck up to him. But you, no matter how you look at it, you can't compare to your brother. In terms of ability, you can't compare to him. In terms of talent, you can't compare to him. Although his face looked like that of a human, it was still far from that of a real human. Mu Yanqing, who do you think you are? He told me not to be too self-righteous. What about you? Don't flatter yourself too much. If you want to put on an act, then don't. That would make you seem even more hypocritical. Hee hee. Boom. Mu Yanqing's head was about to explode from her words. Comparing him to Mu Yaja was probably the greatest humiliation to him. When he was very young, he was always compared to Mu Yaja. When he was young, he was initially in awe of and worshipped Mu Yaja. As a child, it was only natural for him to worship powerful figures, just like how one would look up to a hero. To him, Mu Yaja had always been a mythical figure that he could only look up to but not reach. Chapter 2293. Why was he always being compared to Mu Yaja? Why was he inferior to him in every aspect? Hence, this had become his most untouchable reverse scale. This was undoubtedly the biggest insult to him. A man's ego was terrifyingly strong, especially for someone like Mu Yanqing, who could not tolerate such humiliation. Looking sullen, he kicked the short table away, causing the tea on the table to spill out instantly. Lin Xuya took a puff of her cigarette without batting an eyelid. She did not take his humiliating behavior to heart, and merely sat on the sofa in an elegant and undisciplined manner. Her undisciplined attitude only served to accentuate his wretched state, though. Mu Yanqing stood upright, and suddenly flashed a sinister grin. Under the dim lighting, his grin looked a little wolfish. He suddenly walked up to her slowly, bent down, and lowered his head to look at her condescendingly. Lin Xuya, you probably don't know what kind of person I am. Lin Xuya raised her head to look at him, seemingly unmoved. She only heard him say word by word. I'm an unscrupulous man. I won't give up until I reach my goal. Do you think that you can easily defeat me by humiliating me like this? Lin Xuya, you're still too inexperienced. Lin Xuya sneered. I'm just speaking the truth. If you don't care, it's not bad to marry you. At the very least, I can live a carefree life and no longer have to be controlled. The muscles on Mu Yanqing's face twitched again. He then snorted and said, It was a pleasant meeting. With that, he turned around and left without looking back. He thought to himself, one day, I'll tame this woman who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and make her obedient. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. Lin Xuya finally could not take it anymore. She swung her hand and threw the cigarette on the carpet. The sparks from the cigarette burned the carpet. She was so angry that she stomped on it with her high heels. As she stomped on the carpet, she covered her mouth in pain and coughed violently. How could she smoke? Everything was nothing but an act. It was all for the sake of showing her unrestrained side in front of this man. She was so silly. She thought that by putting on such a frivolous face, she would be able to scare this man away. She pretended to buy a pack of women's cigarettes and even learned how to smoke seriously. Just now, when she was facing this man, everything was pretentious, but once he left, as soon as she let down her guard, she choked on a mouthful of smoke. She threw away the cigarette butt, held onto the armrest of the sofa, and coughed violently. As she coughed, she smiled sadly. Hee hee hee. Lin Xuya rubbed the corner of her eyes and sneered. They're all bastards. Hee hee. In the end, he laughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. Lin Xuya finally stopped coughing. She closed her eyes, but she couldn't stop her tears from flowing down. Once those masks of disguise were removed, even he himself would fiercely hate himself. She thought that she had humiliated that man with her words, but in the end, wasn't she the one who had been humiliated the most? Lin Xuya endured the pain and stood up from the sofa. She picked up her handbag and staggered towards the door. Chapter 2294. She was too naive. But what could she do? How could she live in such a cowardly manner? Even fiercely loving the man she loved had become an extravagant hope. Growing up in such a family, she had been doted on ever since she was born. Aristocratic families all had their own social circles. She had many close friends who were also of noble birth around her. Even so, she was still the one who attracted the most attention. Many people envied her. But how could she not envy those girls of ordinary birth? At least, they had the right to choose their own marriage, didn't they? Equal in social status. Equal in social status. What the F***ck about matching in terms of social status? Why did love have to be built on such an unequal agreement? She looked at the sincere and earnest faces in her family saying, Shuya, we're doing this for your own good. For your own good. With your status, you naturally have to choose a marriage partner who is worthy of you. Your marriage is not a private matter. This concerns the reputation of our family. It's an important matter for our family. It's not up to you to decide. Those trivial voices kept echoing in her ears. Lin Shuya walked to the door and couldn't stand anymore. Her legs turned to jelly, and she sat on the floor. She was the only one left in the huge private room. In such a situation, she couldn't control herself anymore. She covered her face and wailed wantonly. Sob, sob, sob. She really didn't want such a marriage. It was in name only. On the surface, they treated each other with respect, but in the end, she just wanted to be free to like a man, and not be forced to accept such a marriage arrangement. She didn't want anyone. Except for Huajin, she didn't want anyone else. But it was so difficult. Lin Shuya hugged her knees and curled up in a corner, crying bitterly. A waiter passing by outside heard the unusual commotion inside the room. Out of curiosity, he pushed the door open and walked in. However, when he heard crying coming from the door, he was shocked and went around to take a look. He saw an exquisitely dressed woman curled up in a corner, covering her mouth in pain and crying non-stop. He immediately squatted down and tried to help her up. Lin Shuya pushed him away violently. Don't touch me. Sob, sob, sob. Go away, all of you go away. Don't touch me. Madam, what's wrong? Are you hurt anywhere? Get lost, Lin Shuya sobbed. Don't I even have the right to cry? The waiter was embarrassed and stood there, but he was at a loss. He could only call the manager to solve this matter. Of course, this was all in the future. After leaving the hotel, Mu Yanqing did not return home immediately. At this moment he was feeling vexed. After much thought, he decided to go to Meng Qingshua's place, but would he have to face that frowning face again if he went there? Just thinking about it made him sick of it. Forget it. Since I'm feeling upset, I'll go and have a drink. King's Descent Bar. This bar was invested in by a young master from the upper-class circle. Many young masters and ladies from the upper-class circle would patronize this place, and Mu Yanqing would often come here to drink. Whenever he was in a bad mood, he would come here and order a few bottles of wine. He would sit alone in a corner and drink silently. Coupled with the strong alcohol and the deafening music, it would always be able to get rid of all those troubles. Chapter 2295. As soon as Mu Yanqing stepped into the bar, he was greeted by loud and lively music. As usual, he ordered a few bottles of imported wine and sat down in the private room. After the wine was served and the bartender mixed it, he poured himself a glass and downed it in one gulp. After downing the cup of wine, his gloomy mood was relieved a little. How satisfying. Mu Yanqing had just calmed down a little when Lin Shuya's disgusting face appeared in his mind again. Mu Yanqing, it's the elder's wish to marry you. But if you want to touch me, you'll have to see if I'm willing or not. The key is whether you're worthy or not. What a despicable woman. Once we're connected, this marriage will only be in name only. Even if you stick to me, I won't cling to you. After all, no one can force me to sleep in the same bed with a man I don't like and even hate a little. Despicable. Despicable. If the man sitting in front of me this time is Mu Yaja, perhaps I'll be willing to suck up to him. But you, no matter how I look at it, can't compare to that brother of yours. In terms of ability, you can't compare to him. In terms of talent, you can't compare to him. Although your face looks decent, you're still a far cry from that. Mu Yanqing, who do you think you are? You told me not to be too self-righteous, but what about you? Don't flatter yourself too much, either. Don't put on an act. It'll only make you look more hypocritical. Despicable. Despicable. Mu Yanqing cursed in his heart as he downed glass after glass of imported wine. In the past, when he entered the bar, he might have been in the mood to wander around the bar in search of prey. But now he was not in the mood to do so. His mind was filled with Lin Shuya's humiliating words. Every time he thought of her arrogant face, he could not help but want to pinch her face until it was smashed into pieces. Despicable. Brother Yanqing? Amidst the noisy music, a delicate woman's voice suddenly entered his ears. By then, Mu Yanqing had already downed an entire bottle of wine. His alcohol tolerance was not bad, but he definitely could not say that he would not get drunk after 1,000 cups. The bottle of foreign wine was very strong, and the alcohol content was very strong. After drinking it, even his stomach and thoughts became hot. He narrowed his eyes and raised his head. At the end of his line of sight, a woman with light makeup walked into the private room and walked towards him. Mu Yanqing sucked in a deep breath of cold air and took a closer look. This face was not unfamiliar to him. In fact, it was extremely familiar. He was startled at first, and then his eyes widened slightly to take a closer look at the face. When the woman came closer, and he could see more clearly, he smiled drunkenly and was a little surprised. Enya? Song Enya was wearing a red spaghetti strap dress, which accentuated her picturesque features and delicate makeup. Her long eyelashes in particular were especially charming and alluring. What a coincidence. Mu Yanqing smiled. Why are you in this bar too? Song Enya smiled slightly and then sat down beside him, deliberately leaning close to him. Her long, wavy hair was right next to him, and her subtle fragrance was seductive. Perhaps it was because his lips were too close, for Mu Yanqing closed his eyes slightly and sniffed greedily. How fragrant! Chapter 2296. Song Enya explained. I was bored, so I asked a few of my best friends to fool around at the bar. She paused for a moment before her red lips parted slightly. Brother Yanqing, let's have a drink together? Her voice was long and soft, which was extremely bewitching. He snorted. Sure, let's have a drink together. With that, he leaned back and relaxed his posture. Song Enya slowly poured 2 glasses of wine and glanced behind her. She saw that Mu Yanqing was dozing off with his eyes closed. He seemed to be a little tipsy, so he did not pay attention to her. She suddenly smiled coldly and took out a small and delicate bottle from her chest. It was so delicate that it was only the size of half a finger. She slowly dripped a drop of essence onto her finger. Then, she gently rubbed it around the edge of the goblet. She then quickly threw the incriminating evidence into the trash can when Mu Yanqing was not paying attention. Picking up the 2 glasses of wine, she turned around and said with a smile, Brother Yanqing, let me toast to you. Mu Yanqing snorted lazily but did not move. His body sank into the sofa and he did not respond. She pouted a little coquettishly. Brother Yanqing, are you drunk? Drunk. His fighting spirit was undoubtedly provoked when he heard this. He opened his eyes and glanced at her unhappily. It's just a few glasses of wine. How can I get drunk? Then let me toast to you. With that, she smiled and passed the wine glass to him. Mu Yanqing took it from her and raised his wrist slightly to hold the wine glass, gently swirling it. In an unnoticeable moment, the transparent material around the rim of the wine glass silently melted into the wine. Mu Yanqing, on the other hand, did not notice this subtle detail. His attention was not on the wine glass at all. Instead, he sized up the woman beside him from head to toe with a pair of inquisitive eyes. His voice was slurred as he asked, Enya, why are you dressed so beautifully tonight? Hearing this, Song Enya pretended to smile shyly and lowered her eyelashes to look seductive. Brother Yanqing, what are you talking about? I'm clearly beautiful even without dressing up. That's true. Our family's Enya has already grown into a slender and elegant woman. Mu Yanqing deliberately leaned his body gently toward her and raised his hand to gulp down the wine in the wine glass, leaving not a single drop behind. After he finished drinking, he didn't forget to show off as he turned the wine glass upside down and gave her a look. It's done so quickly? Song Enya's red lips parted in surprise, looking extremely flattered. Brother Yanqing, you're really giving me face. Mu Yanqing was not wary of the woman in front of him, whom he had always regarded as his younger sister. He placed the wine glass on the table and pushed it slightly. Help me pour another glass. Yeah. Song Enya nodded, then leaned forward and lowered her body slightly. This action completely exposed the beautiful view in front of her chest. Mu Yanqing had a panoramic view of her plump and seductive beauty. If this woman was not Song Enya and could not be overstepped, he would have long pulled her into his arms and ravaged her ruthlessly. However, for some reason, his endurance was pitiful tonight. With just a glance, he could vaguely feel his body heating up slightly. His temples, in particular, were throbbing violently. Chapter 2297. Resisting the urge to probe further. He reached out his fingers and gently massaged his temples. He closed his eyes and tried his best to get rid of those uncontrollable thoughts, but the more he tried to suppress them, the more they went out of control. A numbing electric current shot up from his waist. He shuddered and clenched his fists tightly, forcing himself to keep a distance from her. Song Inya brought over another glass of wine and raised a brow. Here. Brother Yinching, can you still drink? I don't want to drink anymore. He waved his hand, obviously not in the right state. If I drink any more, I'll probably get into trouble. In a certain aspect, men were not like women who could always maintain their rationality, and were easily driven by lust. He waved his hand and emphasized again, I'll get drunk if I drink any more. I've seen Brother Yenching's alcohol tolerance before. It's clearly very good, but you don't seem to be in the best condition tonight. Despite saying this, she did not deliberately suppress the wine. Instead, she put the wine glass aside, turned around and gently snuggled up to him. She deliberately flirted with him. Her every move was seductive, but she pretended to be reserved. On the surface, she kept a distance from him, but her feigned unintentional behavior was extremely seductive. She turned her head and saw that his face was flushed and his veins were bulging. She knew very well that the drug would soon take effect after drinking a glass of wine. Slowly, under the effects of the drug, Mu Yenching felt increasingly stuffy and suffocated. He subconsciously buckled his tie, tugged at it, and loosened a button on his collar. However, he still felt that he couldn't breathe. Drunk. Drunk. He should be drunk. That shouldn't be the case. Normally, it would take at least 2 bottles of this kind of wine to get so drunk. Mu Yenching shook his head violently. When he opened his eyes again, they were already bloodshot. Enya. He opened his mouth in a daze and spat out a few words. He stammered, I think. I'm a little drunk. You drank too much tonight, didn't you? Song Enya gently stroked his shoulder and muttered. Brother Yenching, is there something on your mind? Just now, I saw you sitting in the corner drinking alone. It was said that a person who drank alone would get drunk faster. Is there something bothering you? Ha, ha. Mu Yenching smiled bitterly and said, T today, AB*Th looked down on me. And, Enya, do you think Brother Yenching is really not as good as that lad? That kid? Song Enya was perplexed. Who? Mu Yaja. Mu Yenching spat out the name through gritted teeth. This name was like a fishbone in his heart. Song Enya's body trembled slightly when she heard that name. Her face turned cold for a moment before her lips curled into a smile. How can that be? How is Brother Yenching inferior to him? Really? Yes. Brother Yenching, don't belittle yourself. I think you're very outstanding, especially. Song Enya gently placed her hand on his thin lips, trailing it along his jaw and all the way down to his heart. Brother Yenching, if any woman catches your eye, it's a blessing that she has accumulated in her previous life. Heh. Chapter 2298. Enya, your little mouth is so sweet. His sudden attack seemed to have given her a great shock. She sucked in a breath of cold air and reached out to push him away. She appeared to be a little flustered and helpless. Brother Yenching, don't do this. Enya, you're so beautiful tonight. With a smirk on his face, he reached out and rubbed that beautiful patch of skin. SSS. The exquisite sensation made him close his eyes involuntarily and lean on her body greedily. At this moment, the medicinal properties in his body were completely activated. His body temperature kept rising, burning her in an instant. She suddenly realized that the drug in the man beside her had completely taken effect. She could not help but struggle for a while before coaxing. Brother Yenching, you're drunk. Let me send you home, okay? I don't want to go home. He hugged her impatiently and mumbled drunkenly. I want you. I only want you. While Song Enya dealt with him, she thought to herself, this medicine is really powerful. It's not like the common knockout drugs in the market. She didn't know where Jiang Qiming got it from, but when she gave it to her, she repeatedly reminded her that the medicinal properties of this medicine would take effect very quickly. If it was mixed with wine and drunk in a cup, the medicinal properties would completely take effect within a few minutes. Furthermore, it would cause people to have hazy hallucinations. It was a hallucinogenic drug. She did not expect the drug's effect to be stronger than she had imagined. Mu Yanqing's body was crooked as he kissed her face in a daze. At the same time he kept muttering, "It's so hot. It's so hot." Mu Yanqing could not withstand such a strong drug effect. Besides, he had drunk a lot of wine earlier, so he was already drunk. Now he felt even hotter. He leaned back on the sofa and could not help reaching out to buckle his necktie. He tugged at it repeatedly, as if he could only feel better after getting rid of the tie's restraints. Seeing that he was free from her, Song Inya sat up nervously. D*MN man. How can he be so strong? She cursed him viciously in her heart as she lowered her head to examine her body. The straps of her neat dress had fallen off and slid down her shoulders. The hem of her dress had been ravaged by him, until it was incomparably wrinkled. Just now his ferocious movements had actually almost torn her underwear. She felt uneasy and glanced at the man beside her from the corner of her eyes. She didn't know when he had sat up, but he was staring at her with a gloomy face. His eyes were like torches, sharp and frightening. "Why are you here?" Song Inya was bewildered by his abrupt question. She widened her eyes in confusion and stared back at him. "Brother Yanqing. What do you mean by that?" Her soft and gentle greeting of Brother Yanqing actually turned his originally sharp expression into one of tenderness. It was an incomparably soft and affectionate feeling. Mu Yanqing's body swayed slightly as he shook his head. When he opened his eyes again, they were incomparably gentle. Chapter 2299. Just like when they had first met. She was like a budding flower. She looked at him shyly with her fluttering eyelashes, looking very lovable. Qingxue. Mu Yanqing smiled foolishly, his thin lips parting slightly as he murmured. With that, he leaned over and pulled the missy into his embrace. "Qingxue, don't leave me, Song Inya was confused as she listened to this delirious man mumbling incoherently. She could not make out what he was saying. It seemed that he had completely lost his mind. She chuckled and said, "Brother Yanqing, let me send you home, okay?" "Okay. I'll go home with you." Song Inya's lips twitched again. She took a deep breath and carefully adjusted her posture to prevent him from hurting the child in her womb. Ever since that incident, she had been locked up at home by Song Zhenghua and was not allowed to go anywhere. Initially, she was determined to get rid of the child. However, for some reason she had a dream one night. She dreamed that the child was born. It was as adorable as a porcelain doll with fair skin and jade bones. It nestled in her arms and babbled, "Mommy, mommy." When she woke up from her dream, she leaned against the headboard with mixed feelings and gently caressed her belly. For some reason, her maternal instincts were awakened by this dream. Yes, this was her flesh and blood, too. As a mother, she actually wanted to kill this little life. No matter how bad it was, she wanted to keep this child. After all, it was her flesh and blood. From then on, she no longer secretly dumped the food delivered by the servants into the trash can. Instead, she worked hard to nourish her body and replenish her nutrients, hoping that she could give birth to this little life healthily. "Someone come in." A bodyguard walked into the private room expressionlessly. "Missy, what are your orders? Is the car ready?" "Yes, it's ready. It's waiting at the door now." Song Inya nodded and gestured to Mu Yanqing. "Carefully help him into the car." "Yes." Mu Yanqing was a little heavy, and she could not lift him at all. Fortunately, she had the foresight to bring a bodyguard with her. The bodyguard helped Mu Yanqing into the car. Song Inya also got in and sat in the back seat. The car sped away from the hotel. Along the way, Mu Yanqing had completely lost his rationality. Like a starving wolf, he pounced on her body and kissed her while his other hand followed his instinct to ignite her body. No matter how chaste a woman was, she would not be able to resist the ferocious medicinal properties of this medicine, let alone a man. Song Inya could not stand his harassment any longer. She frowned and pushed his shoulder repeatedly. "Brother Yanqing, don't bear with it. We'll be home soon." Mu Yanqing was pushed some distance away by her. Between their mouths, sparkling and translucent strands of silver could be seen. It was an ambiguous and beautiful sight. The whole car was filled with a heart-pounding temperature. The chauffeur heard heavy breathing coming from the back seat, and could not help sneaking a glance at the rearview mirror. However, when he glanced at the rearview mirror, he met Song Inya's sharp gaze. What's there to see? Chapter 2300. And no. Drive properly. Yes. Missy. The chauffeur knew his place. The car soon arrived at the hotel. Song Inya immediately pushed the door open and instructed the chauffeur, keep an eye on him. Yes. As Song Inya spoke, she turned to look at Mu Yinqing meaningfully before smiling gently at him. Brother Yinqing, I'll be right back. Don't go, BM. The only response he got was the cold sound of the door slamming shut. 5 minutes later, the woman returned. However, it was not Song Inya but another woman. This woman was also wearing a long red dress. Her figure was similar to Song Inya's, and she had the same exquisite makeup. At first glance, they looked very similar. After opening the car door, the woman leaned over and spoke in a soft and charming voice. Brother Yinqing, let's go home. Qingxue. Mu Yinqing continued to repeat this name as he allowed the woman to support him. They staggered into the hotel, passed through the magnificent lobby and long corridor, and entered the elevator. Pushing open the door of the hotel room, the woman helped Mu Yinqing into the room. Just as she led him to the bedroom nearby, Mu Yinqing instantly turned the tables. He held her shoulders, flipped her over and pressed her down on the bed. The woman's breathing was a little hurried, and he was also panting heavily. Lying on top of her, he stared at her. The woman under him was charming and alluring, but in his eyes, only Meng Qingshue's charming face appeared in the end. This drug would cause people to hallucinate. He would see whoever he thought of. Qingxue. He muttered under his breath and suddenly lowered his head to kiss those soft red lips. He reached out his hand and roughly pulled off her shoulder strap. There was almost no foreplay. On this king-sized bed, he fiercely took possession of the woman under him. Qingxue. Qingxue. In the rhythm, he kept repeating this name. He was intoxicated and crazy for her. In the midst of sex, he wanted her and thought of the other her. His memories were overturned. Yinqing. The woman under him responded to him. Mu Yinqing lowered his head and seemed to see Meng Qingshue's shy and charming eyes. They were captivating. His lower abdomen tightened, and he almost released all of it. Song Inya pushed open the door and entered the room. Standing in the living room, she could hear the man's heavy panting and the woman's coquettish moaning coming from the bedroom. The effects of the medicine had to be neutralized. But now that she was pregnant, it was naturally inconvenient. Fortunately, under the effects of the drug, this man could not recognize who he was having sex with. When he was tired, the effects of the drug had worn off, and he fell asleep. She would switch places. When Mu Yinqing woke up the next morning and saw her, he would naturally assume that she was the woman he had spent the night with. At the thought of this, she suddenly flashed a flirtatious smile. She unintentionally turned her head, only to catch sight of her pale and embarrassed face in the mirror. She suddenly felt that she looked a little pitiful. Pitiful. Lamentable, lamentable. How could she have fallen to such a state? She actually did not hesitate to trample on herself like this, just for a status. Song Inya trembled as she touched her face. Pursing her lips, a vicious glint flashed across her eyes. What's the point of thinking about something so useless? Since things had already come to this, he should grit his teeth and take the final step. Chapter 2301. At the thought of this, she sneered and returned to her senses. She then strode into the private room. Inside the private room, there was a charming scene. Mu Yinqing and another woman were entangled together. The room was filled with the light of spring, and it was a little absurd. The two were so immersed in their lovemaking that they did not notice her arrival at all. Song Inya leaned against the door and watched silently. It was so annoying. She turned around and was about to leave when the phone behind her suddenly rang, startling the woman on the bed. The woman looked up and was about to search for the source of the ringtone when she saw her. She almost let out a scream. Song Inya put a finger to her lips and shushed her, indicating for her to keep quiet. The woman was tactful and lowered her head. Song Inya swept her gaze across the floor. Her suit jacket had fallen to the ground, and the ringtone was coming from inside the jacket. She quickly walked over and took out the phone from the jacket pocket, only to see the name, Qingxue, on the screen. Is this his woman? She could not help but grip the phone tightly. She glanced at the woman on the bed, and then turned to leave the bedroom with the phone. In the apartment, Meng Qingxue sat on the sofa in the living room, holding the phone tightly. However, no one picked up the phone even after the long beeping. The call was quickly disconnected. Why isn't he picking up? It's already so late. Could it be that he's already asleep? Meng Qingxue placed the phone on the sofa in a daze and silently glanced at her feet. It was a packed luggage bag with some simple clothes and documents inside. Other than that, there was nothing else. Everything in the apartment had already been packed. Whether it was the jewelry, the expensive car, or the clothes that he had given her, they had all been put away. The only things that she had taken away were some of the accompanying clothes and some money that she had withdrawn from his account. It was not much, but she thought that if she lived in a small city with one bedroom and one living room, it should be enough to cover her expenses for a year or two. She was pregnant, and she did not know if she could find a job to support her family with her current condition. Therefore, to be safe, she thickened her skin and withdrew a sum of money from his account. She was leaving this city, however, after walking one round around the room. She couldn't bear to leave. He was her first man. This phone call was her last hope for that man. Even if it was just one sentence. No, just 3 words. You're not allowed to leave. She would also obediently stay in this apartment, just like a guard, waiting for the day when he would come. However, the only response she got was the beeping sound of the phone not being picked up. Meng Qingxue was unwilling to give up. She picked up the phone again. She didn't care if she was scolded for being unreasonable or humiliated. She just wanted to hear his voice. Such a small request wasn't too greedy, right? Meng Qingxue nervously picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she found his number. However, she could not muster up the courage to press the dial button. After a long mental struggle, she finally mustered up the courage to make the call. At the same time, the screen flashed and the caller ID popped up. It was a call from Mu Yanqing. Meng Qingxue's face lit up with joy. She quickly picked up the call and put the phone to her ear. Chapter 2302. An unfamiliar woman's cold voice could be heard from the other end. Who are you? The woman's voice was arrogant and contemptuous as she questioned her coldly. Meng Qingxue was stunned. Seeing that Meng Qingxue did not reply, Song Enya became even more impatient and asked coldly, "Why aren't you saying anything? Who are you looking for when you're calling?" The phone fell to the ground with a thud. Meng Qingxue covered her trembling lips sadly as big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. It's so late. It's already so late. Why is his phone with a woman? Is it really because he has fallen in love with someone else that he hasn't visited me for so long? What is this? I'm not his official wife. I'm just a canary that he's keeping by his side. I don't even have a basic status. What does he mean by falling in love with someone else? What kind of love is this? This unfamiliar woman called back and used her status as his official wife to interrogate me about my identity. How ironic. Could it be that he didn't even have her saved name in his phone? At this thought, Meng Qingxue was even more devastated. She felt that her feelings for him were all one-sided. She was deeply in love with this man, but now it seemed so ironic and laughable. Song Enya held the phone and vaguely heard a woman's desperate sobbing from the other end. She knew her name. Her contact number was in Mu Yanqing's phone. She took the opportunity to read through his messages earlier. No wonder Mu Yanqing kept muttering that name while hugging her. It seemed that she was one of his little lovers. Actually, she was not in the mood to care how many lovers he had, but on second thought, Mu Yanqing would be her husband in the future. Since he would be her husband, perhaps it would be a marriage without many feelings, but there were some things that she had to care about. He kept calling Qingxue when he was drunk. She must be a woman who held a lot of weight in his heart. Therefore, she should at least show her who's boss. Song Enya held the phone and said arrogantly and coldly, "Are you still there? Speak." Meng Qingxue picked up the phone again with trembling hands and asked cautiously, "Is Yanqing there? I'm looking for him." "Oh, brother Yanqing." Song Enya sneered. "Why are you looking for him?" Meng Qingxue felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart when she heard the woman address her so intimately. She bit her lips tightly. He's with me, but he's tired now, so he's asleep. Meng Qingxue was stunned, her eyes widening in disbelief. Don't call me again in the future. With that, the missy hung up the phone. He was already asleep. He was with her. Who was she to him? His woman? Or was she just one of his many lovers? However, Meng Qingxue felt particularly upset when she heard her addressing Mu Yanqing in such an intimate manner. Damn it! She must be crazy. Why did she make this call? Meng Qingxue cried out in grief. She covered her face and wailed wantonly. Song Enya's every word was like a sharp knife cutting into her heart. She felt as if her flesh and blood were about to be torn apart. It was as painful as being twisted by a knife. Her heart hurt so much. Boo-hoo, her sobs gradually turned into heart-wrenching wails. She could not take it lying down. Chapter 2303. Even if it was just to hear his voice before she left, was that still an extravagant hope? Meng Qingxue wiped her tears fiercely, stood up abruptly, picked up her luggage, and walked towards the door. But just as she reached out and touched the doorknob, she turned back and took a look at every corner of the apartment. She couldn't bear to leave. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks as she sobbed. Every corner of the apartment made her feel reluctant to leave. They had once made love to each other on that big bed. She had once laid her head on his lap like a spoiled child on the sofa in the living room. In the dining room, she could even vaguely see her busy cooking for him. Even now, his jacket was still hanging on the balcony. The most painful distance between them was when he wasn't by her side, but he was in her heart. No matter what she saw, it was as if she was seeing him. Meng Qingxue slid to the ground. Holding on to her last hope, Meng Qingxue bit her lip and held back her tears as she dialed the last number. No matter who picked up, she had to hear his voice. This was probably the last bit of courage she had left. From the beginning of this relationship, she had always been the passive party. She was weak and petty. When he didn't think of her, she guarded this small apartment like a person who stayed behind and waited for him to come. She didn't dare to ask for too much and was as petty as a beggar. Sometimes, when she missed him, she wanted to hide under the blanket and cry silently. But in the end, she didn't dare to disturb him. When he thought of her and came here, she was overjoyed like a childish child. The petty and helpless feeling she had when she missed him was instantly swept away, and she was beaming with joy. She hoped that he would truly place her in his heart and love her, so that she wouldn't be lonely and have no home to go to. She loved him, but she was incomparably petty and lowly, as low as the dust. But in exchange for her cowardice, he didn't care. This was the first time she had mustered up her courage, but it was also the last time. Meng Qingxue held the phone tightly. She only hoped that when the call went through, she could hear his voice as usual, even if it was an impatient voice. Meng Qingxue widened her eyes. She was so nervous that she felt a little suffocated. However, just as the call connected and she was about to speak, she suddenly heard the sound of a man and a woman making love. Ha! His flirtatious voice continued to enter her ears through the receiver. There was probably nothing that could defeat a person more easily than such a voice. It was direct and brutal. She couldn't hear the woman's voice clearly, but she could hear the man's voice clearly. It was a familiar voice. It was him. It was really him. On such a night, he was by another woman's side. Was it that woman just now? She purposely picked up the call so that she could hear how she was pleasuring Mu Yanqing under her. So, at this moment, someone had already taken her place? He didn't need her anymore. And she was no longer needed. He. Meng Qingxue's lips parted as she laughed with hollow eyes. However, before this kind of laughter could be heard, salty tears had already slipped into the gap between her lips. Why did he have to use such a cruel method? He wasn't asleep, was he? He had also tacitly agreed to use this method to completely destroy her last bit of obsession, right? Chapter 2304. She abruptly threw the phone away, as if that would save her from the bone-chilling humiliation. Meng Qingxue leaned against the door and slowly fell to the floor. She bit her lower lip hard and dug her sharp fingertips into her palms. She glanced at the plane ticket on the table and, as if she had made up her mind, slowly stood up. Midnight. Song Inya sat in the living room with her arms crossed and eyes closed. Mu Yanqing's phone was quiet on the sofa. After the call just now, that woman named Qingxue seemed to be tactful and did not call him again. After a long period of passion, the bedroom gradually returned to silence. The woman put on her clothes and walked out of the room. She saw Song Inya sitting on the sofa as if she had been waiting for a long time. She licked her dry lips and walked up to her. "Miss Song." Her voice was weak, with an inexplicable sense of inferiority. Song Inya opened her eyes a little and raised her head to look at her. "Is it over?" "Yes. It's over." "Where is he?" "He's already asleep." Since the drug had worn off, he naturally fell asleep from exhaustion. Song Inya sat up straight. The woman standing in front of her had a face that was somewhat similar to hers. However, when the makeup was washed off, the resemblance was not so obvious. She did not know how long the two had been entangled, but at this moment, the woman's face could not hide her exhaustion. Her hair was messy and one of her eyelashes was missing. Song Inya could not help feeling puzzled when she saw a cut at the corner of her lips. "What's with the corner of your lips?" "Corner of my lips." The woman touched her upper lip in surprise and hissed in pain. "I think he bit me. I didn't notice it just now." "Heh." Song Inya raised a brow. She then picked up a leather bag from the sofa and took out a thick stack of money. This woman had just graduated from university and stayed in the capital after graduation. It was said that her boyfriend was in urgent need of a sum of money for his postgraduate studies, so she thought of this method to raise the money. 50,000 yuan was just a few words to Song Inya, but it was not a small sum to her. She glanced at the money before tossing it on the table. "There's a total of 50,000 yuan here. Do you want to count them?" "No need." The woman smiled awkwardly and said, "Miss Song said that it's 50,000 yuan, so it must be true." As she spoke, she reached out to take the money. "Wait." Song Inya suddenly spoke up to stop him. The woman's eyes widened in surprise. She furrowed her brows and looked at her in confusion. "Do you have any other orders?" Song Inya suddenly asked. "This is your first time, right?" The woman was stunned and nodded awkwardly. "Is it a safe period?" "Safe period? I haven't studied it before, so I don't know much about it." Song Inya smiled. She then glanced at a pill and a glass of water on the table and ordered, "Take this medicine." "This is..." The woman was surprised. "Don't worry, it's not poison." Song Inya added, "It's a morning after pill." "I've taken the morning after pill before. It's effective for 72 hours. What she was thinking was that it would not be good to take too much of such medicine, right? Chapter 2305. "I didn't see it, so it doesn't count." The girl could not help but clench her fists tightly. This woman was more heartless than she had imagined. Sucking in a deep breath of cold air, she stared intently at the stack of cash on the table. Gritting her teeth, she picked up the glass of water, mixed it with the pill, and gulped it down. When the pill slid down her throat, she put down the glass of water and pursed her lips. "Miss Song, I'm done. Are you satisfied now?" "Yes. Taking this medicine is good for me, and it's good for you too. I think you don't want a child to appear out of nowhere. I heard that you did this behind your boyfriend's back. You should have done it cleanly, right?" "Yes, you're right, Miss Song." "Then may I leave this place now?" Song Inya nodded her head in tacit agreement. She then gestured to the money on the table and said, "Take it." Thank you." The woman did not seem to feel humiliated. Just as she took the money and was about to leave, Song Inya suddenly called out to her, "Wait. What's wrong now?" The woman was a little annoyed, but she restrained herself. Turning around, she saw the other's cold and meaningful expression. "Remember to keep your mouth shut. Only you and I know about this. If a third party finds out about this, you should know what I'm capable of, right?" The last sentence was dragged out, but it sent chills down one's spine. The woman could not help but shudder. She glanced at the other's incomparably gloomy face and felt her hair stand on end. She hurriedly said, "Miss Song, don't worry. I'll definitely keep this a secret. There will definitely not be a third person who knows about this matter." "You'll do your best." The woman nodded hurriedly. Then she pulled her coat tightly around her, opened the door, and fled the place. The door slammed shut with a bang, and the spacious suite fell into silence. Song Inya glanced coldly at the phone on the sofa, and then slowly stood up. She walked to the mirror and looked at her face in it. Then she bit the corner of her lower lip hard. His strength was so great that it didn't take long for the corner of his lips to be bitten by his teeth. Wisps of blood flowed out. Narrowing her eyes, Song Inya suddenly reached out and messed up her hair with all her might. At the same time, she tore at her clothes with all her might. Her shoulder straps and skirt were all torn apart. As if to create a realistic effect, she actually ruthlessly messed up her own body. Song Inya took another look at her disheveled appearance in the mirror, before walking into the bedroom with her chest held high in satisfaction. In the bedroom, the bed was a mess. Mu Yanqing was lying on the bed in a disheveled state. His tall figure took up more than half of the 3-meter-long bed. Song Inya glanced out of the window. Unknowingly, it was already past 3 o'clock. Dawn would break soon. She slowly laid down beside him, but her eyes were still open. She didn't immediately fall asleep. Since he had already come this far, he would not give up until he achieved his goal. She couldn't afford to lose. When Mu Yanqing regained consciousness, he suddenly felt a splitting headache before he even opened his eyes. His head was so painful that it felt as if it was about to explode. When he opened his eyes slightly, the nerves in his eyes twitched violently. What's going on? Chapter 2306. My head feels heavy and painful. What exactly happened? Why does my head hurt so badly? Mu Yanqing lay motionless on the bed. Even though he was already awake, he did not open his eyes immediately. His consciousness was in a state of complete paralysis. Even though he was awake, his nerves seemed to be under control. Even lifting his fingers was strenuous. What happened? He vaguely remembered that he drank a lot last night. Could it be because he was drunk? It couldn't be, right? His head had never hurt like this after a hangover in the past. What in the world had happened? Mu Yanqing tried to recall, but his mind went blank. He vaguely remembered that he seemed to have met Song Inya last night, and drank 2 glasses of wine with her before he gradually lost consciousness. In his hazy state of mind, he seemed to see Meng Qingshue's gorgeous red lips struggling against his body, her eyes hazy with tears. Brother Yanqing, don't. Her aggrieved and accusatory voice kept echoing in his ears. However, he did not know if the memory was too vivid, but he actually heard that intermittent sobbing sound again. No. This is not a hallucination. Mu Yanqing opened his eyes abruptly. The moment his eyes widened, all of his senses became incomparably sharp. Hence, he could hear the sobbing sound coming from beside him even more clearly. The moment he opened his eyes, he found himself in an unfamiliar room with a huge bed and luxurious furnishings. The room was dimly lit with curtains. Woo woo woo. The sobbing sound entered his ears and became increasingly clear. Mu Yanqing sat up abruptly and turned his head in the direction of the sound. His abrupt action undoubtedly frightened the person beside him. He saw a woman in a red dress curled up at the head of the bed. When she saw that he had woken up, she let out a startled cry and hugged her body in fear as she trembled. Don't come over, I beg you. Brother Yanqing, don't come over. Mu Yanqing was stunned by her trembling sobs for half a second before he quickly realized who this woman in front of him was. Song Inya. This realization left him completely dumbfounded. Even though the woman before him was dressed in rags, her hair was messy, and her makeup was ruined by her tears, he was able to immediately identify her from her trembling voice. Song Inya's voice was very recognizable, especially when she was crying. One would never forget it after hearing it once. Why was it her? Mu Yanqing was stunned for a few seconds. When he saw her trembling in fear, and did not know what had happened, he could not help but lean toward her. Inya. Ah! Song Inya was so frightened that she retreated even further until she had shrunk into a corner. With nowhere to hide, her tears flowed even more violently and her cries became even more tragic. Brother Yanqing, don't come over. I'm scared. Sob sob sob. Please let me go. Mu Yanqing was even more stunned now. What the hell was this? Why was she crying? Also, why was she in such a sorry state on his bed? What in the world happened? After losing consciousness yesterday, he vaguely remembered that he had uncontrollably intertwined with a woman. In his memory he saw Meng Qingshue's face. What in the world happened? Why was she crying the moment he woke up? Chapter 2307. Liar. Brother Yanqing, you're a big liar. She lost control of herself when she heard this and burst into tears. Mu Yanqing was even more confused and did not know whether to laugh or cry. The more she cried, the more confused he became. However, when he lowered his head, he caught a glimpse of a bright red bloodstain in the middle of the messy bed under the blanket. He was stunned for a few seconds before he reached out and lifted the blanket, only to discover the bloodstains on the bed. Mu Yanqing thought of a frightening possibility and widened his eyes abruptly. Glaring at her, he pointed at the scattered bloodstains on the bed. Is this yours? Song Inya continued to cry and did not answer his question. However, the sorrowful and aggrieved expression on her face clearly confirmed his suspicions. D***. He was no longer a naive teenager. He would never think that these bloodstains were from a girl's menstrual period. It was not that he had never played with a virgin before. It would be ridiculous if he still could not figure out what had happened at this juncture. He lowered his head to examine himself again. He had taken off all his clothes except for a shirt and a pair of socks. His lower body was naked. He did not need to think about what had happened. It was just that he wanted to recall the scene last night, but he could not figure out what had happened. Mu Yanqing quickly realized what had happened last night. He raised his head abruptly and looked at Song Inya, tongue-tied. You. Song Inya's tears flowed even more violently and fell continuously. When she saw that he had regained his senses, her face became even more embarrassed. She covered her mouth tightly and let out intermittent sobs. Don't cry, don't cry. Mu Yanqing's head swelled as he tried to comfort her. Don't cry? What exactly happened last night? Brother Yanqing, how could you do this? Song Inya cried aggrievedly as she spoke with much difficulty. Mu Yanqing was stunned when he heard this. What should I do? Song Inya broke down and covered her face in embarrassment. This is my first time. Boom. Mu Yanqing's mind exploded with white light all of a sudden. He furrowed his brows and looked at her helplessly, feeling even more uneasy. You. Inya, don't cry, okay? I'm a bastard. I was drunk last night and didn't know anything. Maybe I did something bad to you, but it was unintentional. Song Inya suddenly looked up with a pale face and stared at him with teary eyes. Her lips kept trembling as she mulled over his words. I unintentional? I'm probably drunk, so I can't tell who the woman beside me is. I'm a jerk. I didn't mean to look at you. He explained through gritted teeth. What did Inya do wrong? How could Brother Yanqing do this to me? How could he do such a thing to me? What should I do? Song Inya's body trembled even more at the mention of her sore spot, and she burst into tears. Chapter 2308. Song Inya choked with sobs as she lamented bitterly. Brother Yanqing, I've always treated you as an elder brother. But you actually did such a thing to me. I shouldn't have trusted you. I shouldn't have trusted you. No matter what you said last night, I shouldn't have believed you. I should have left you at the bar and ignored you. But who asked me to be so soft-hearted? Who asked me to be so soft-hearted? When I saw you drunk like a puddle of mud and mumbling a woman's name, I couldn't bear it. My heart ached for you and I was afraid that you'd be in danger if I left you at the bar, so I kindly offered to send you home. But, at the crucial part, her tears fell even more violently. Mu Yanqing was anxious, but he forced himself to endure it and listened to her patiently. Song Inya wiped her tears and intermittently recounted what happened last night. From her account, Mu Yanqing vaguely knew what had happened last night. Last night, after parting on bad terms with Lin Shuya, he was feeling vexed. He originally wanted to go to Meng Qingshua's place, but just the thought of her gloomy face made him anxious. Hence, he made a detour to the bar and ordered a few bottles of imported wine in an attempt to relieve his frustration. However, halfway through drinking, he happened to meet Song Inya, who was also playing at the bar. Seeing him drinking alone, Song Inya offered to accompany him for a drink. Mu Yanqing was not in a daze at that time. He was still sober and somewhat conscious, but he was also in a tipsy state. Later, for some reason, after a few drinks with Song Inya, he was completely drunk. Song Inya was originally worried that he was drunk, so she wanted to call a cab to send him home. However, he was very drunk at that time and kept mumbling Meng Qingshue's name, saying that he did not want to go home and wanted to go to Meng Qingshue's place. Song Inya cried and said, "How would I know who the name you kept mumbling is? You said that you wanted to go to that woman's place, but I didn't know the address. When I asked you, you wouldn't tell me and kept mumbling that name. I really had no choice, so I thought to send you to a hotel. At least, I'll wait until you're sober." Hence, she called for a chauffeur and sent him to the hotel. Along the way, Mu Yanqing began to grope her. He hugged her while calling out Meng Qingshue's name. Song Inya endured it. She had intended to leave after